The story begins by showing the face of a giant bird with glowing red eyes representing imminent danger. Soon after, we see soldiers pointing weapons at desperate people in a scenario marked by hunger and discrimination. In the midst of the chaos, a soldier readies his weapon and reflects on how weakness has turned his country into a true nightmare. Suddenly, several weapons fire violent fiery blasts toward the battlefield. The soldier ends up being hit by multiple shots without having any chance to defend himself. He falls to the ground, losing his strength as he realizes his life has come to an end along with the fall of his nation. However, a bright light reflects in the fallen man's eye just as his vision begins to darken. A glowing hand emerges from the darkness, radiating a very intense golden energy. Without hesitation, the young man firmly holds the illuminated hand that rescues him from that abyss. He is then pulled upward by a beam of magical light and ends up being revived. When he opens his eyes, the soldier realizes he has been taken to a completely new world and looks around a school courtyard. Sitting in a classroom, he recalls that 3 years have passed since he arrived in that unknown place. The young man decides to take advantage of this second chance given by the heavens to fix all the mistakes of his past. At the front of the class, a teacher tries to calm down the students who are very anxious for the awakening ceremony. The instructor yells, asking everyone to gather on the sports field for the grand event that will define their lives. At this moment, it is revealed that the world changed when dungeons appeared and brought terrible monsters to Earth. To defend themselves, humanity also awakened powers, and warriors were classified into different levels of strength. Images show knights bravely fighting the creatures, confirming that someone's class is everything in this world. During the event, the elite student Luna Veramon awakens the rare Purification Saint class, showing off immense power. The students comment that she reached 95 talent points and guarantee that this results in the highest grade. Soon after, the crowd goes wild when it is Pluto's turn to be called to the stage under everyone's curious gazes. The boy finally begins to walk toward the testing area while the instructors call his name out loud. Pluto steps forward with confidence for having reached 200 talent points, being considered the best student of the 3 academies. Along the way, the protagonist crosses paths with Luna, and the two exchange tense looks on the bleacher steps. The platinum-haired girl smiles provocatively, asking him not to disappoint her in the test. Not paying much attention to his classmates' words, Pluto keeps walking in silence and maintains his calm posture. Accompanied by the cheers of the crowd calling his name, the young man approaches a magical altar where the test will take place. He reaches out his hand, his eyes glowing in a deep blue shade, as he prepares to touch the awakening sphere. Watching from afar, a mustached instructor comments that having a unique talent like that student's is a true blessing. The man remembers that the best guild offered 5 spots and that Pluto is guaranteed a place if he awakens a high class. The blue dragon symbol illustrates the fame of the #1 guild in the whole nation, highlighting the organization's great prestige. Joining this team means gaining a lot of power and a bright future with the ultimate glory coveted by everyone. But what really motivates Pluto is knowing that the Blue Dragon Group acts as the official military force of that country. The young man remembers his past life as a soldier who met a tragic end when great powers invaded his home. With this in mind, the young man touches the sphere, determined to become the strongest warrior in the world to protect his nation. A colossal explosion of blue energy radiates from the sphere, making the students believe he has awakened a supreme power. However, Pluto pulls his hand back a bit, looking completely surprised by what he is seeing before his eyes. Luna and the instructor also widen their eyes in shock as they witness the huge plot twist in the awakening result. The system reveals that the boy became a necromancer while a dark aura full of skeletons surrounds his body. A gigantic purple flame dominates the field and leaves everyone in a dead silence facing the boy's intimidating new power. The students think it is a supreme class, but a girl clarifies that necromancer is the worst ranked C class possible. Completely shocked, Pluto looks down, sweating cold, and tries to understand where he went wrong to receive such a useless class. The system panel confirms his new rank C class, showing that all his basic attributes are at level 10. From afar, the mustached instructor crosses his arms and sighs in deep disappointment, confessing he had high expectations for the student. The young man reads the description of his only summoning skill and thinks that even with a second chance, he is doomed to be a nobody. Several golden screens appear, warning that the class restrictions have been removed, putting an end to any summoning limit. Very excited, the young man realizes that by using his initial 10 points of mana, he can summon 10 soldiers instantly. The boy reflects that this is only the beginning, because as he levels up, his creatures will become increasingly unbeatable. A vision shows a massive army of skeleton knights marching menacingly to take down any enemy. With his eyes shining brightly, he concludes that the absence of limits turns him into a one-man army. Confident, the young man clenches his fist, believing that this change alone is enough to crush any higher-ranked class. His train of thought is interrupted by the instructor yelling for the student to stop daydreaming and get off the stage immediately. Walking in silence, the boy finds it ridiculous how the teacher attitudes change so quickly just because his class is inferior. With a slight smile on his face, Pluto decides to start leveling up, since the dungeons will be very easy with his current strength. A group of students comments on the protagonist's strange reaction and concludes that the weight of reality must have driven the boy crazy. Soon after, a green-haired young man approaches with a mocking smile, provoking the golden boy of the elite class. Hugging a blonde girl, the student brags about being superior and offers to take Pluto to the dungeons as his personal lackey. With his eyes closed, the protagonist remembers that this guy named Adrian Blackwood has always had a huge grudge against him. Adrian laughs maliciously and comments that imagining the famous genius walking behind him like an obedient little puppy is a perfect scene. Ignoring the situation, Pluto turns his back and walks away, thinking it is not worth wasting his breath on such an insignificant guy. A female voice cuts through the wind, praising the protagonist's great patience for not fighting back against the insults he just heard. Looking to the side, the young warrior finds Luna leaning against a pillar, waiting for his approach in the middle of the path. Maintaining a tired expression, he warns the girl that he is definitely not in the mood to put up with any jokes. Showing a very sincere posture, the elite student makes an unexpected proposal, offering to help level the boy up. Suspicious, the young man says it would be a huge burden to carry a weak novice, but the warrior rejects that idea right away. As Pluto starts walking again, the student tries to convince him, saying that her help would greatly increase his chances with the guild. Holding the boy's arm, the girl shows complete confidence. Someone with such a perfect score would never be a common mage. Observing his classmate's bright face, the protagonist reflects that the Harris is still an extremely intelligent person. With a polite tone, the young man thanks his classmate for her good intention of wanting to step down to his level to help and takes a brief pause. Gently removing the girl's hand from his arm, Pluto refuses the offer directly, leaving the girl completely surprised. Adjusting his tie, Pluto declares that he will join the Grand Guild on his own and that there is only one path left for him to take. With a purple gleam in his eyes, he vows to reach a level so high that it will be enough to humble all the novice classes. Standing before the Academy's crowded dungeon hall, Pluto remembers that the sequential trials are the fastest way to evolve. With a goal in mind, he advances through the corridors of the huge complex, leaving some curious students along the way. In front of the massive glowing portal, the boy remembers that the trials must be done alone and that turning back is no longer an option. It is well known that this place attracts only the elite or the reckless. After all, the experience reward far exceeds any normal dungeon. Nearby, the main class's teacher walks with Luna and other students, noticing the young man's presence near the glowing rift. The instructor covers her mouth in despair, deducting that the shock of his poor new level forced the young talent to seek his own downfall. Very apprehensive, the woman tries to keep a cool head and deduces that Pluto was never the type to seek the most shameful way out. Preferring to prevent a disaster, the teacher decides to wait in the hall and keep watch to call for backup if the worst happens. A floating island reveals a massive isolated area with a green energy dome at the top, indicating the starting zone. Pluto observes the peaceful environment and immediately recognizes that the protected location is the dungeon's safe zone. The young man reflects that there will be no turning back once he takes his first step outside and officially enters combat. As he moves forward, he comes across a large pack of level 1 void dogs displaying extreme aggression. The protagonist understands the novice's dread when he sees that he will have to face 10 fierce monsters right on the first floor. Wasting no time, the boy uses his magic and summons 2 skeleton warriors to test the strength of his new creatures. The summons advance swiftly and focus their heavy strikes on the monsters at the front lines of the pack. The soldiers with purple flames swing their swords and severely injure the wild dog with extremely precise cuts. The system announces that the targets have been taken down, yielding experience, and the young man smiles to see that he can manage the fight. Pluto walks calmly through the scenario as the defeated forms of the shadow dogs fall all around him. The warrior reflects on how he went from being the center of attention to becoming the school's biggest laughingstock. A memory of the mustached instructor telling him to get off the stage reinforces all the feelings of humiliation he suffered today. On the battlefield, another soldier slashes a magical dog while the panel warns that there are only 5 points of magic left. The boy's mind is also haunted by Adrian's arrogant attitude, offering to adopt him as a useless lackey. Another dark memory from his past life shows an invading soldier calling his people an inferior race unworthy of living. The boy notices that the look of contempt he received from the elite is exactly the same as the ones he faced in times of war. With a dark posture, the protagonist swears he will never allow that again and promises to focus on becoming the strongest. Using all his remaining energy, the young man summons the maximum number of soldiers and forms an intimidating dark battalion around him. He calculates that his 10 demonic summons should be more than enough power to clear the entire starting floor. The necromancer plans to optimize the clashes by sending 2 soldiers for each canine beast, aiming for maximum efficiency. In a synchronized leap, the skulls with glowing eyes raise their blades to completely wipe out the enemy forces. One of the armored combatants brutally attacks a canine, securing another 20 points on the master's experience board. Seeing the eliminations, the boy deduces that he will reach level 2 in less than 10 minutes with tremendous ease. Knowing that regeneration is 1 point per minute, he concludes that a short break is enough to fully restore his stamina. Hearing the sinister grunts of his soldiers, the warrior is certain that very soon he will command a massive army. With a simple attack command, the boy orders his troops to continue clearing the area of any hostile creatures. A few more battles are won as the henchmen finish off their prey with decisive sword strikes right in the middle of the dry dirt. A pillar of purple aura swallows Pluto's body, and the system announces that he has evolved to the highly anticipated first level. Reading the screen, the boy notes that he gains 5 free attributes and also recovers 1/3 of his mana with the new rank. Understanding that magic determines his survival, the necromancer decides to pour all the earned attributes straight into mana. This choice expands Pluto's energy reservoir, allowing him to maintain up to 15 warriors at the same time in combat. With absolute conviction, the warrior's gaze reveals that he is more than ready to face the challenges of the next floor. On the second floor, the combat gets intense, and the skeleton guard secures a swift elimination on a fierce gray-furred wolf. Walking across a green lawn, the protagonist notices that the enemies have evolved and decides not to underestimate the creature's danger. A short time later, the solitary hunter is engulfed once again by the mystical aura, proving that leveling up there is a very easy task. Upon raising his total magic to 20 points, the young man celebrates having created a perfect cycle of summons and rapid eliminations. Walking down a small slope, the adventurer notes that the animals become more macabre as he goes deeper into the dungeon. Huge monsters resembling shadowy horses snort in anger and show off their frightening, fiery red eyes. Facing the troop of macabre, Pluto sees them all as mere bags of experience and points his finger, demanding an attack. Obeying its creator, the shadowy soldier intercepts the bestial creature using the blunt side of the heavy blade in a sharp strike. The shadowy blades strike the wild horse's neck, securing another quick victory for the skeletal battalion. The monster's form turns into magical dust, and the young man deduces that the creature's strength is already enough to eliminate his soldiers. Despite the small risk, the boy shows off his confidence as he now possesses the incredible mark of 30 invoked minions. The undead knights keep taking down the mud horses at a frantic pace, filling the screen with point bonuses. An intense blue aura surrounds Pluto, signaling that he has managed to reach the desired level 5 with great mastery. A notification warns that the evolution lock has been removed, allowing the soldiers to absorb defeated targets to evolve. The system illustrates that a common skeleton can transform into a heavily armored knight by mastering the enemy's strength. The protagonist realizes that increasing the number of eliminations will bring a huge variety of warriors to his army. A majestic vision shows the young man's silhouette wrapped in purple magic, reinforcing his calling to be the king of the underworld. The system also unlocks the gunpowder skeleton skill, capable of causing explosions over a large impact area. With a confident smile, the boy reflects that having area of effect attacks will be perfect to test in the 5th floor trial. The new scenario features a dry plain inhabited by massive armored rhinoceroses showing off intimidating horns. Knowing that regular warriors would take too long to cut through that tough hide, the master decides to change his strategy. Snapping his fingers, the warrior converts one of his skeletons, wrapping the creature's skull in orange flames. 3 converted soldiers run across the field carrying giant gunpowder barrels marked with glowing red skulls. The young man watches the scene with a neutral expression, noting the rather improvised look of his new combat unit. Hiding his face with his hand, he tries to ignore the rustic appearance and focuses only on the expectation of overwhelming damage. The volatile skeleton runs clumsily, carrying the heavy barrel toward the gray beast's huge paws. The bestial creature lets out a deep roar as it faces the tiny minion, completely unaware of the lethal bomb's lit fuse. A colossal explosion takes over the scenery, raising a cloud of blazing fire that lights up the entire battlefield. The boy is impressed with the destructive damage and concludes that one should not judge skills based on appearance alone. Reading his attributes, he understands that he will need to greatly increase his mana if he wants to use this tactic repeatedly. The necromancer walks thoughtfully and laments that the sequential trials offer a lot of experience but absolutely no items. Determined to solve this problem, he crosses the magic barrier with the intention of visiting the specialized equipment shop. Outside, the teacher widens her eyes in shock as she sees that her student came out completely unharmed and at level 5. The woman realizes that the perfect test score made Pluto a huge anomaly and decides to report the case to the principal. In the luxurious principal's office, Julian Kingsley listens to the teacher as she complains about being overworked after the ceremony. The man gets annoyed upon hearing Pluto's name, stating he has no time to waste on students limited to the lowest rank. Keeping her focused, the teacher questions what the true strength would be of a novice who reaches the 5th floor in a single hour. The principal is left speechless, remembering that a novice mage would barely survive 5 minutes against the void dogs. Completely bewildered by the astonishing report, the superior questions how the boy managed to pull off such an unreal feat. Out on the street, Pluto observes the commercial center and gets discouraged upon discovering that even the cheapest clothes cost gold coins. In the dungeon lobby, the warrior deduces he will have to hunt for his own equipment and watches a team walk out injured. Analyzing the glowing panel, the young man chooses to explore the giant rhinoceros mountain by selecting the gold difficulty. The new dungeon scenery reveals immense rocky cliffs, while the necromancer summons his guards with sharp spears. The boy's main objective is to defeat the local boss to obtain the valuable rewards hidden within the dungeon. With a large energy reserve, the master advances, knowing he can endlessly expand his battalion throughout the battle. A group of stone rhinos tries to trample the troop, but the skeletons manage to block the attack without suffering any losses. Using spears enchanted with intense magic, the summons pierce the monster's rocky skin, securing swift eliminations. Suddenly, a gigantic beast awakens in the middle of the rocky desert, letting out a roar that makes the ground shake with its strength. The immense stone rhino lets out a furious roar, revealing the aggressiveness of the monsters in this new area. Watching the clash, the young man notes that his guard's physical attacks are not very effective against that tough defense. Without worrying about it, he raises his hand, emitting a strong flame, and warns that he doesn't have just a single trick up his sleeve. Commanding the magic, the boy immediately converts one of his soldiers into an incandescent gunpowder-carrying skeleton. The bestial creature is enveloped by a monstrous explosion and ends up being taken down, yielding another 100 experience points. The warrior realizes that no armor can withstand his walking bombs and decides to transform all his minions into explosives. Right after, a huge flash takes over the rocky desert while several creatures are destroyed simultaneously. Bathed in mystical energy, he reaches the 6th level and deduces that eliminating the floor's leader will guarantee another quick evolution. A massive dark shadow covers the team, revealing the true king of the stone rhinos ready to defend its territory. The colossal monster lets out a deafening roar, showing off its long sharp horn and glowing eyes filled with pure hatred. Pushed back by the gust of wind, the protagonist admits his surprise at the beast's colossal size for a simple level 5. Keeping his calm, the boy tells his opponent to look around, because the giant creature had already fallen into his fatal trap. A huge troop of almost 100 volatile skeletons surrounds the Rhino King, ready to detonate all the barrels at the same time. An inferno of flames completely consumes the boss in a devastating explosion that yields an incredible 5,000 points of advantage. The Necromancer reaches level 7 and praises his tactic, revealing that not even the boss could survive his genius strategy. A bright light catches the boy's attention amidst the flames, revealing that a valuable item just dropped from the defeated beast. The giant rock staff displays epic quality, granting 30 extra points of magic and another 10 points of pure defense. With a huge smile on his face, the warrior celebrates having hit the jackpot, getting wonderful first-rate equipment. He recalls the theoretical classes, confirming that the system classifies items by colors and rarities very strictly. The young man is amazed to realize that his luck was absurd for fighting the exact equipment he needed at the epic level. Holding the mystical weapon, the boy calculates that an item of lower rarity would cost at least 100 gold coins at the big store. Evaluating his new numbers, the adventurer notes that the staff's bonus raised his magical energy to the value of 75. Wrapped in purple flames, the necromancer quickly understands he now has the power to command up to 75 mortal warriors. Back in the main hall, the boy comes across Adrian and his arrogant group blocking the passage and crossing his path. The green-haired rival smiles maliciously, stating that the lackey spot is still open, and demands the novice beg for it. In total silence, the protagonist just directs a cold and distant look at the boy without showing any reaction of fear. Thinking Pluto was rejected by the strong groups, the bully mocks him, imagining that no one wants to carry such a weak rank. Adrian holds his bluish axe to brag about his rare item, promising to give him weapons and women if the boy becomes his lackey. The rival's henchmen take the opportunity to insult the protagonist, telling him to quickly accept the humiliating deal so he doesn't meet his end alone. The blonde girl lets out a cruel laugh and says no woman would approach a widow even if Adrian ordered it. Completely losing his patience, the necromancer gets close to the provoking boy's face and warns him that he will only speak once. With his eyes emanating a strong purple mystical energy, Pluto tells the spoiled brat to get out of his sight with a very heavy insult. Feeling his pride wounded, the rich student grabs the protagonist's tie in a fit of rage while demanding an answer. Desperate, the student tries to calm her leader down, reminding him that starting any fight in the hall results in immediate jail time for everyone. The argument attracts curious glances from several hunters and students who form a circle around the two young warriors. Suddenly, a huge guard wearing sunglasses appears in the middle of the crowd, shouting and demanding to know what is going on there. To cover up being caught red-handed, Adrian lets go of the boy quickly and lies shamelessly, saying they are just playing around lightly. The guard sternly warns that the lobby is not an amusement park, telling everyone to move along, while Adrian asks for one last minute. Through gritted teeth, the rival promises that the necromancer's life will come to an end when they meet outside the safe zone. Without looking back, the troublemaker calls his group and resumes his path, determined to conquer the 5th floor that very day. With his eyes glowing in a menacing shade, Pluto thinks he would have destroyed his rival right there if he hadn't been interrupted. The security guard advises that people like Adrian are beyond saving and asks the boy to call him if he is bothered again. Pluto walks toward the red portal, but the guard tries to warn him that this level is much too high for a novice. Suddenly, the security guard widens his eyes and begins to sweat cold when he notices a shocking detail in the young necromancer's hands. Holding the epic staff, the protagonist decides to use his 4 daily attempts to level up as fast as possible. The man deduces that the student has already defeated the king of the rhinos on gold difficulty and is completely shocked by this. The young man steps through the glowing portal, leaving the guard perplexed upon realizing that the student cleared the rocky mountain by himself. Accompanied by his skeletal army, the necromancer decides to pick up the pace to finish all his daily rounds quickly. Outside, the security guard keeps staring at the red portal, confirming that the boy really chose the gold tier. Highly impressed, the guard reflects that beating the golden dungeon alone is a feat that not even the highest ranks would accomplish. In the boss room, the gigantic king of the rhinos lets out a furious roar while the volatile skeleton prepares its barrel. The warrior in a suit gives a very confident smile and mocks the monster's desperate attempt to try and bare its fangs. A massive explosion consumes the rocky beast, securing another 5,000 experience points and the success of the second round. Without moving a single muscle, the protagonist watches the immense stone creature fall completely defeated by his side. Maintaining his relentless posture, the boy makes an ironic comment about how the monsters in this place simply do not learn their lesson. The relentless hunt continues with more skeletal bombs blowing everything up and destroying the great bosses over and over again. With a simple command, the master orders his subordinates to advance and the macabre skulls run, carrying more explosives. The devastation is absolute, and yet another heavy carcass collapses onto the dirt floor, marking the end of another extremely easy combat. The system displays an inventory packed with rare weapons and armors that the young man plans to sell later since they are useless to him. Walking out of the portal, the boy decides to rest for the big professional novice test that will take place tomorrow. The status panel reveals that he reached level 9 and managed to get to an impressive 85 points of magic. The next day, the outer area of the Grand Academy wakes up completely packed with several students excited for the event. The novices talk about the guild tests while bragging about having reached level 4 by playing in large groups. Walking through the middle of the crowd, the warrior in a suit finds it very strange that other people's level progression is so slow. Suddenly, the tranquility is cut short by Adrian, who approaches from behind, mocking the necromancer's solitary effort. Wearing reddish armor, the rival brags about having reached level 5 and sneers, asking if Pluto found any help. The provocation is interrupted by the academy principal, who demands silence to begin the important professional novice test. The man in his suit announces that the top 5 will be recruited by the main guild, and the first place will win an epic item. The students are amazed by the generous reward and the great chance to secure a prestigious future in the best team. The teachers induce the experienced elder Aaron Crowley, revered as the powerful and boundless source of the military guild. An instructor explains that the gentleman will create monsters in the test rooms, and the ranking will depend on the eliminations within half an hour. The respected white-mustached elder shows a serious face while a strong blue magical aura surrounds his entire body. The news causes immediate panic, as the students fear being crushed by the fearsome creatures of a level 70 mage. Raising his hand, the veteran calms everyone down, guaranteeing that the beast will be weak and that he will stop the test for anyone who calls for help. The students celebrate the elder mage's control skill and regain their confidence to do their absolute best in the arena. Convinced, Adrian goes back to mocking the necromancer, stating that he will make Pluto his personal toy as soon as he joins the elite. Running out of patience, the young man in a suit flashes his purple gaze and warns that he is ready to play for real with the rival right now. The protagonist proposes a bet based on the test rankings to decide once and for all who is the strongest hunter in the place. The warrior in red armor laughs out loud and mocks the absurd idea of comparing the ranking of 2 hunters with such distant levels. Facing his rival head-on, Pluto ignores the insults and simply tells Adrian to choose the punishment for the big loser. Infuriated, Adrian warns that the loser will crawl and bark like a dog in front of the entire school, and Pluto simply agrees. With his back to the crowd, the principal in a suit announces that the first day of the Academy's novice test has finally begun. The man in his suit instructs all the students to enter their respective evaluation rooms through the large double doors. Beside the elder, the security guard reports that the teleportation portals are active and that Aaron Crowley can now begin the test. Bringing his hands together, the powerful level 75 mage focuses his energy, creating a bright glowing green magic circle. Quickly, the magic seals appear under the feet of Pluto and the other competitors and start transporting them to the arenas. Already at the exam site, the protagonist displays a serene look as he closely watches the first challenge appearing before him. A group of level 1 bronze soldiers holding sharp spears forms from the bright magic in the middle of the room. Determined, the young man calls forth his dark skeletons and steps forward with his scythe, wanting to test the strength of his summons. In response, the greenish armor constructs run at high speed, pointing their weapons straight at the necromancer. Without stepping back a single millimeter, the boys undead raise their large axes and charge into hand-to-hand combat. With a swift and relentless movement, the shadowy minion slices the bronze soldier in half, making the enemy armor shatter. Resting his scythe on his shoulder, Pluto concludes that the monsters fall easily and would only give him trouble if he had just one minion. Outside, the elder mage notes that someone eliminated 5 enemies very quickly and decides to increase the challenge's volume. In front of the young man in a suit, a new green light forms, revealing the silhouette of more armed enemies joining the combat. The protagonist sees his undead defending against heavy blows and assesses that 5 skulls can handle the job easily. Watching the clash, the boy notes that each dark minion can deal very well with 2 simultaneous opponents. Sweating cold, the elder is completely shocked to realize that 10 of his bronze soldiers were destroyed instantly. Impressed with the pace, the security guard praises the students, and a woman in a blue cape agrees that there's a lot of talent in that class. Curious to know who is leading the devastation, the teacher demands that the ranking screen be shown to everyone there. The security guard opens his eyes extremely wide and can hardly believe it when he reads the necromancer's name at the top of the general leaderboard. The glowing magic scoreboard shows Pluto's name isolated in first place with 15 points conquered in record time. Observing the numbers, the woman nervously notices that the first-place student's score keeps climbing with every passing second. In the blink of an eye, the screen updates again, showing that the young necromancer has already surpassed the mark of 23 eliminations. Trembling with surprise, the guard questions if the woman finally believes in the overwhelming strength of that mysterious boy. A school staff member tries to understand if the student surpassed the class's limits by possessing 200 talent points. The veteran mage remembers that he only had 99 points in his time and considers the young man a true diamond in the rough. Excited about the boy's potential, Aaron Crowley channels a massive amount of magical power to increase the difficulty. Oblivious to the audience, Pluto keeps his hands in his pockets and concludes that this test is much easier than the rhinoceros dungeon. Suddenly, a loud sound catches the boy's attention, making him turn his face toward a forming wall of greenish magic. The flash fades, revealing dozens of new bronze warriors surrounding the necromancer on all sides of the vast empty arena. With a drop of sweat running down his face, the protagonist evaluates the absurd number of targets gathered in that small space. An incalculable legion of magical combatants marches together, forming a green wave ready to crush the boy's summons. Showing no fear at all, the young man flashes an excited smile and tightens his grip on the scythe's handle, accepting the elder's numbers challenge. A purple mist covers the place, and 30 bone soldiers appear, screaming fiercely to prove which army is the most powerful. Meanwhile, in the next room, Adrian uses his heavy axe to cut down the bronze creatures in a very furious charge. Sweating heavily, the red-armored warrior celebrates his eliminations and swears that the necromancer will never reach his points. A memory from 2 years ago surfaces, showing the exact moment Adrian scored 77 points in the talent test. The boy celebrates the high-level score with a giant smile while other classmates ask to be carried by him. The memory ends and the warrior's expression changes to dark shock as he realizes that Pluto scored 200 points. In the memory of the past, Pluto stands alone while Adrian and the other students watch the talent evaluation room. A blonde student is impressed and comments that 200 points put the boy at the top of the national ranking. The academy's principal acknowledges Pluto's talent and tells the elite students that they should try to keep up with him. Completely revolted by the teacher's order, Adrian refuses to accept the idea of being on the same level as Pluto. The young man remembers he is the second heir of the Blackwood family and states that only his older brother has ever surpassed him. Infuriated by the situation, the warrior swears he will never accept trying to just keep up with some penniless orphan. Back in the present of the test, Adrian swings his great axe with all his might and destroys another enemy soldier. The boy guarantees that his night class will crush the necromancer and tells Pluto to get ready to bark really loud. Laughing insanely, the arrogant heir to the Blackwood family hits the mark of 15 points on the academy scoreboard. At the same time, a dark minion of Pluto slices a monster, and the protagonist's score jumps to 79 points. The warrior skeletons show great skill and block the green spear's attacks with their swords. Next, a gigantic axe comes down violently and cuts off the bronze soldier's head without giving any chance of defense. The protagonist watches the intense clash calmly and reaches an incredible 100 points on the general test control panel. Evaluating the scenario, the young man notes that he lost 14 skeletons and concludes that casualties are normal against a large army. Without lowering his guard, the necromancer prepares to summon more allies because he knows new enemies will appear soon. With half of his mana spent, the boy tries to understand why the number of opponents has spiked so much in his arena. The principal and the security guard are amazed as the young man surpassed the historical record with only half the time elapsed. Sweating nervously, the elder realizes that 100 of his soldiers have already been eliminated and compares the difficulty to a level 5 boss. Gripping his staff tightly, the veteran mage channels even more magic and mutters that the boy is trying to humiliate him. Aaron Crowley unleashes a giant pillar of green energy, leaving the academy's security guard completely desperate. With a worried look, the powerful evaluator realizes that things are getting out of his control and fears the worst outcome. The security guard approaches and asks if the elder is okay or if the student's tests ended up draining all his magic. The white-mustached man guarantees he could summon 10,000 soldiers without breaking a sweat, and the employee questions what the danger is. Showing a serious expression, the advanced level mage confesses that he got carried away and summoned too many enemies in Pluto's arena. Aaron estimates that the boy might be in serious life-threatening danger, but Pluto flashes a huge dark smile on the battlefield. Holding his scythe, the protagonist faces a literal wave of thousands of bronze soldiers and questions the reason behind all of this. Seeing his few undead fighting against the crowd, the boy concludes he will need to use his most powerful weapons now. With a simple snap of his fingers, the necromancer activates his special skill to summon dangerous explosive gunpowder skeletons. Instantly, the magic converts one of the minions into a skeleton carrying a huge barrel of flames, about to blow everything up. Several dark soldiers appear carrying heavy barrels of gunpowder and begin running toward the enemy army. Showing a purple glow in his eyes, the young man commands his dangerous summons to blow the adversary's sky high without mercy. Without hesitation, one of the volatile skeletons jumps into the middle of the green ranks while the constructs raise their spears. The security guard begs the elder mage to cancel the summons immediately because they cannot lose a talent like Pluto. The principal watches the blue magical screen very closely while pondering the true limit of that mysterious boy. Suddenly, the woman in the blue cape extends her hand toward the two staff members and orders that the cancellation of the test wait. The guard doesn't understand the order and warns that the boy will be torn apart by the fearsome bronze monsters if they wait any longer. Nervous and sweating heavily, the man points his index finger directly at the scoreboard, begging the teacher to look at the numbers. The holographic panel updates quickly, showing the protagonist's score jump to 295 eliminations. Soon after, the score goes up non-stop and reveals that the necromancer reached an impressive 350 eliminations. The security guard's jaw drops, and he questions in disbelief if the person taking down so many monsters is really the rank C student. The elder mage reflects that a recently awakened student with such talent and power could be the nation's salvation in the future. The security guard insists on ending the test to avoid a tragedy, but Aaron wants to test the boy until the score starts to drop. Inside the arena, a gigantic orange explosion incinerates dozens of enemies and raises the score to 800 eliminations. Several undead continue to throw the large flaming gunpowder barrels and secure the 900 points. The green constructs are thrown into the air without any chance of defense amidst the chaos of flames and debris. Walking through the thick cloud of dust, the necromancer displays a serene look as he notices there are still some invaders left. Without losing the rhythm, a dark minion wields its sharp sword and receives a direct order to eliminate all the survivors. Surrounded by destroyed structures, Pluto reaches the incredible mark of 1,000 points and wonders if he went too hard on that challenge. In the monitoring area, the academy staff watches the ranking panel and notices that the elimination counter has stopped. Amazed by the result, the powerful vice president of the guild whispers that the young man wiped out his entire bronze battalion. The woman in the blue cape celebrates the test's success and asks if the respected mage wants her to bring the student immediately. Not understanding the white-mustached elder's response, the two advisors exchange a long look filled with confusion and astonishment. With an extremely serious expression on his face, Aaron announces that he will personally go to the evaluation room of the mysterious competitor. The guard gets desperate, reminding him that the evaluation is not over yet, and questions what will happen to the other students during this visit. Strong circular magic wraps around the mage's body as he guarantees that his spells in the other rooms will remain intact. Determined to investigate the case up close, the bearded gentleman reflects that the protagonist's potential will be incalculable if it's all real. In the blink of an eye, a magical flash takes over the arena floor, marking the instant travel of the advanced level mage. After eliminating the competition, the young boy in the dark suit breathes a sigh of relief next to his imposing skeletal summons. The protagonist acknowledges that dealing with more than 100 constructs without his powerful bombs would be a very unpleasant problem. Suddenly, a magic circle emits a strong blue light behind Pluto's back, making him suspect the arrival of more enemies. Watching the dense silhouette forming in the magic, the young man notices that this time only a single target was sent to the grand arena. Acting on pure protective instinct, the beasts of dark bones run swiftly to corner the newest invader of the area. In a brutal and coordinated charge, the undead bring their deadly blades down right toward the glowing visitor's head. With a simple command, Aaron paralyzes the dark swords mere inches away from his own face. The experienced evaluator analyzes the frightening skeletons up close and mutters to himself about the boy's peculiar summons. Surprised by the sudden visit of the person in charge of the exam, the student questions the real reason for that untimely invasion. The veteran comments that only rank C necromancers do that, and the boy confirms he possesses exactly that class. Facing Pluto closely, the older man points out that this class suffers from the limit of summoning only once every half an hour. A drop of sweat runs down the boy's face when he hears that the test has just begun, and yet there are dozens of minions there. The elder mage locks his gaze on the shadows and demands to find out how the student managed to form such a huge and fast army. The necromancer swallows hard, realizing he was caught red-handed, and starts to mentally debate whether he should reveal his great secret. Aaron dismisses the excuses and says he just wants to know if the student's power can be properly controlled to protect the nation. Remembering the reason he was given a second life, the boy decides he needs the powerful magic examiner's approval. Determining that he will reveal his cards little by little, the protagonist raises his arm and conjures more energy around his body. Purplish flames wrap around the boy in the suit and impress the experienced visitor with the immense amount of mana released. Two new macabre skulls take physical form in front of the elder, while the young man explains the old 30-minute limits. The air heats up with the bone beasts, and Pluto continues detailing the old restriction of summons lasting only a single hour. With his purple pupils glowing in the dark, the newly awakened boy loudly and clearly warns that none of those limits apply to him. Several dark blades rest upon the wreckage, confirming the young man's statement about possessing unrestricted summons. The veteran mage widens his eyes in absolute shock upon hearing from the mouth of a mere freshman about unrestricted necromancy. The elder squints in pure shock as he tries to process the absurd revelation about that young man's infinite powers. Aaron tries to confirm if the boy can command her tireless legion using only mana, and Pluto agrees. Staring at the boy in the suit, the veteran mage reflects that the student's value transcends that of a mere promising novice. Determined, the white-mustached gentleman advises that he will report everything to the guild president to secure the boy's future. Greenish magic wraps around Aaron as he stutters in agreement, and Pluto deduces he is talking about the leader of the Azure Dragon Guild. The teleportation light suddenly fails, and the protagonist is confused, not understanding why the spell was cancelled. Before leaving, the elderly mage reaches out his hand and offers a small golden key as a special gift from his guild. With wide eyes, the necromancer looks at the glowing object and tries to process the grandeur of that reward. Holding up the small artifact, Aaron asks if the young prodigy has ever heard of the famous Blessing Rifts. Maintaining his serene posture, Pluto confirms that he has already studied this very rare subject during his classes at the academy. A colossal level 10 beast illustrates the danger of the magical rift that grants much more experience than normal dungeons. An enchanted warrior illustrates the legend about the special keys that have an almost non-existent chance of being found. The protagonist loses his composure and is left speechless upon realizing that the powerful mage is actually giving him a legendary item. The white-haired man maintains a serious and determined expression, confirming his good intentions toward the boy. With all the care in the world, Aaron hands over the golden artifact that allows opening the magical rift a single time for the student. Finally, the teleportation magic works, and the veteran disappears in a beam of green light, leaving the boy alone in the arena. Clenching the golden key with his eyes glowing purple, the young man decides to explore the secret rift right after the test ends. In the outer area of the academy, the principal announces to all students that time is up and that the grand test has finally ended. Adrian lets out a long sigh of relief as he leans his body on his sword and celebrates the end of that extreme exhaustion. Observing the destroyed room, the hair in red armor reflects on the large number of soldiers he faced. Flashing a wicked green look, the warrior brags about taking down 40 enemies to be the best in the entire school. Suddenly, the sound of the loudspeakers echoes through the arena, demanding that all students gather in the courtyard for the results. A literal crowd of exhausted students begins to gather in the open space, forming a sea of anxious people. Two classmates talk in frustration about the enemy's brutal difficulty and Layman getting only 7 and 15 points. Walking with his chest puffed out, the arrogant warrior in red looks for his rival in the crowd, thinking Pluto ran away. A student points to the side, and the arrogant boy finally finds the necromancer calmly waiting for the result. With firm and heavy steps, Adrian walks quickly across the courtyard's green grass, heading straight toward his main target. Without an ounce of respect, the hare grabs Pluto's tie and says the boy has a lot of nerve to stick around there. Ignoring the insults, the protagonist keeps his calm and firmly holds his valuable golden key inside his pocket. Bringing his face closer, the green-haired boy threatens his rival and tells him to get ready to bark in front of the school. With a sadistic smile on his face, Adrian warns that he can hardly wait to see the necromancer crawling humiliated across the courtyard. From the top of the balcony, the school principal asks for complete silence to reveal the official scores of the first day of tests. Holding a holographic clipboard, the man in the dark suit warns that he will read aloud only the top 5 students. The principal reveals that Tristan took 5th place with 39 points, and the crowd is in shock over the high level. Laughing at the situation, Adrian confesses to Pluto that his own score was even higher than the 5th place overall. Adrian is announced in 4th place with 41 points and tells his rival to bark, but Pluto warns that the event isn't over yet. Furious, the hare tells the necromancer to stop dreaming about the podium right at the exact moment Luna is announced in 3rd place. The white-haired girl celebrates her 77 points, and the students admire the incredible power of her support class. Muscular Colin hears that he came in 2nd with 95 points and gets upset, wanting to know who reached the top. Sweating cold and taking a deep breath, the academy principal prepares his trembling voice to announce the true champion of the test. The principal shouts at the top of his lungs that Pluto is the grand champion with his perfect and absurd score of 1,000 points. A deep silence takes over the entire crowd, who listens to the official announcement, unable to believe that revelation. Soon after, the students go into complete shock when they realize that the new record smashed the school's old mark. Talented Luna is amazed by the feat, while another young man points out the low level of the grand winner's class. Colin breaks a cold sweat when calculating that the protagonist needed dozens of eliminations per minute to achieve the insane result. In total panic, Adrian starts sweating cold and can hardly form a sentence when he finds out he was beaten in the tournament. The rich boy's eyes twitch in absolute despair faced with the insurmountable score of the powerful necromancer. Trembling from head to toe, Adrian approaches his rival from behind, trying to find a logical explanation for all of this. Maintaining his cold and serene gaze, Pluto just informs him that the opponent has just lost the bet they made before the trial. Adrian steps back, accusing the champion of cheating, while the protagonist mocks him, asking if he's really going to back down. The crowd of students starts laughing at the situation, remembering that the loser promised to bark like a dog in front of everyone. Unable to accept defeat, the hair student stumps hard on the school grass, his mind dominated by blind fury. He falls onto his seat, yelling that it's completely impossible for a low-level necromancer to reach a score of 1,000 points. The crowd asks the loser to have some dignity and pay up the bet, while dedicated Loon observes the commotion from the back. On the stage, the principal takes the floor again and announces that the champion will receive an epic equipment piece from the famous Dragon Guild. Pluto is called to the stage and warns that he won't waste time with trash, demanding Adrian stay far out of his sight. Thrown to the ground, the boy threatens his rival and states with hatred that he holds a high rank and will soon surpass the necromancer. Consumed by arrogance, the boy in red armor yells that he will make his rival suffer until his sad demise. Upon hearing the absurd threat, the grand champion of the tournament turns his face darkly to face the loser head-on. A massive and terrifying skull of purple energy appears behind Pluto, exhaling an aura of pure terror and doom. Faced with the crushing presence, Adrian lets out a high-pitched scream of despair and recoils on the ground, totally paralyzed by fear. After silencing his greatest opponent, the young necromancer resumes his walk with an expression completely devoid of compassion. He walks up the long white stairs of the courtyard, while the other students watch every step of the academy's new king. As soon as the champion steps onto the official stage, the smiling principal places a hand on his shoulder and celebrates the great victory. The man in the suit gestures with his hand, revealing that the partner guild has set aside 3 options of valuable items as a prize. Projections of a sword, a set of armor, and a magic cloak appear in the air as the principal asks the young man to choose something. Pluto stares at the grand rewards and carefully evaluates which one will bring the most advantages for his growth. He notices that the heavy sword and the chest plate are made only for frontline warriors, being useless in his case. Realizing that only one viable option remains, the young man reaches out his hand to collect the dark-colored mystical cloak. Upon putting on the new garment, he celebrates the magic mana bonus, noting that he can now summon 50 more undead. The principal raises Pluto's arm and publicly consecrates him as the undisputed winner of the first day of tests. The entire audience of students goes wild and raises their fists in unison, praising the true prodigy's name. Bathed in the afternoon sun, the young necromancer smiles discreetly as he savors the glory of his impressive feat. To wrap up the event, the leader advises that the next big test will take place in 1 month, demanding that everyone stay focused. The scene suddenly shifts to the surroundings of a very simple housing complex, marked by its long time in use. In his small, humble room, Pluto holds the valuable mystical key he received as a gift from old Crowley earlier. He remembers the instructions from a manual and channels his dark energy straight into the object in his hand. The small key shines brightly and shoots purple rays into the air, opening a distorted rift with its concentrated charge. The necromancer discovers in surprise that the golden amulet can tear through space and create dimensional passages on the spot. At that moment, he remembers Aaron suggesting he seek the support of a healing partner for his future explorations. With a determined look, Pluto mentally apologizes to old Crowley, ignoring his advice to look for a healer. He walks calmly toward the dimensional portal and states in a low voice that he always prefers to work entirely alone. Distorted energy takes over the room, revealing the mystical passage that swallows the young necromancer in a bright light. Crossing the dimensional barrier, the boy observes the rocky landscape of the dungeon and tries to identify the local creatures. He notices level 9 leopards and assesses that the monsters have low health but make up for it with extreme speed and damage. Tapping his scythe on the ground, the protagonist decides that the best combat strategy is to not let the felines get close. The mage summons a troop of undead soldiers and orders the skeletons to form an impenetrable barrier around him. The bone warriors raise heavy metal shields and create a powerful frontline to protect their master. The beasts jump fiercely against the defense but end up impaled by the spears, receiving a fatal blow that yields experience. Not believing the notification, the boy comments that even the common monsters of that place grant an enormous amount of energy. After finishing off the entrance creatures, the school champion announces that it is the perfect time to advance through the dungeon. While walking through the canyon, he realizes that keeping his summons on the defensive wastes too much attack potential. A dark feline tries to attack from behind but receives a brutal cut from a skeleton soldier equipped with a sword. The beast roars in pain as it is sliced in half by a lethal strike, guaranteeing even more evolution points for the necromancer. Enveloped in a whirlwind of emerald light, Pluto feels the power running through his veins upon reaching the highly desired level 10. He touches a holographic panel, smiling victoriously when he notices that his new milestone unlocked a skill. The magic consists of summoning a large demonic eye that causes pure mental terror in any enemy that stares at it. The mage reflects and understands that the debuff's duration depends on the target's level, making the crowd control incredibly broken. He remembers that other people consider this technique useless due to the long cooldown time of 24 hours. Exuding confidence, the boy concludes that his special talent bypasses that rule, allowing him to cast the magic infinitely. A thunderous sound echoes through the rocky terrain, revealing enormous paws and sharp claws stepping firmly onto the battlefield. The king of the leopards appears, roaring fiercely before the skeleton troop, showing off glowing red marks on its body. The necromancer widens his eyes, amazed to bump into the den's leader so prematurely in his exploration. He quickly commands his loyal bone minions, ordering them to surround the giant beast and destroy it without mercy. Using the weight of its own body, the speedy monster charges forward like a tractor, destroying the defensive lines with brute impact. With a simple, swift movement, the shadowy feline cuts through the air, sending pieces of armor and bones flying everywhere. Analyzing the combat, the protagonist notes that the enemy's speed is so surreal that it prevents any military formation there. The feline king tears apart more sentinels while Pluto calculates that his troops will be obliterated before causing any major damage. Having no other choice, the young man in the dark suit wields his arcane scythe, exuding intense chaotic energy from his body. Long, macabre bands of red power spread across the scenery, distorting the air and painting the dungeon with crimson hues. A monumental sphere of pure blazing power forms in the sky, crushing everything around it with a heavy and dark gravity. The protagonist smiles coldly as he releases the fatal gaze and tests the oppressive range of this newly acquired skill. With a voice full of authority, he yells directly at the boss monster, ordering it to turn its face toward him. Instinctively, the giant creature answers the call and looks up, revealing large white teeth and lethal fangs. In that same second, the feline feels a crushing tightness in its chest and freezes in place, swallowed by absolute terror. The powerful necromancer smiles in satisfaction when he sees the paralyzed monster, proving that the magical mind control is infallible. The large-eyed scarlet flames hover over ghostly skulls, creating a true psychological nightmare on the spot. Dominated by invisible bindings, the Dungeon King retracts its paws and lets out a weak whimper, unable to move a single muscle. In profile and very serene, the boy concludes that the magical fear will last exactly 5 seconds due to the difference in strength. Shrugging his shoulders, the protagonist states that he can cast the magic again while summoning a soldier made of gunpowder. Wasting no time, the protagonist calls forth a squad of skeletons carrying heavy gunpowder barrels on their heads. With a merciless look and flames burning at his fingertips, the boy gives the final order for his army's charge. An intense sequence of explosions covers the entire battlefield, hitting the body of the giant feline monster directly. Enveloped by the intense flames, the king of the leopards lets out a piercing roar of pain as it tries to withstand the strike. As soon as the magical terror effect ends, the creature leaps fiercely over the fire to crush the barrels. Keeping his calm, the young man raises his dark scythe and decides to apply the mental terror again using his rare power. The monster's impact crushes the wood and throws debris in the air at the exact moment Pluto activates his dark technique. The massive and frightening red eye forms once again in the sky, pouring an oppressive energy over the area's boss. Immediately trapped by absolute fear, the feline becomes an easy target and suffers from the continuous detonation of the lethal items. After the smoke screen clears, the mage celebrates the huge amount of experience acquired with the elimination of the Great King. The victorious necromancer moves up to level 11 and realizes that the rewards from this special rift are out of this world. Analyzing his panel, he recalls that leveling up unlocked another restriction break in the middle of the tense fight. The new floating notice reveals the unlocking of ethereal form, which temporarily transforms the user into an intangible being. Pluto is completely shocked to discover that this new defensive technique makes him immune to any kind of attack. The boy concludes that he needs to accumulate a lot more mana to sustain the rapid energy drain of this skill. Suddenly, the young champion's eyes catch a strange reflection shining brightly on the other side of the rocky ground. A monstrous pillar of golden light tears through the dungeon sky, indicating that the boss monster left a legendary item there. Meanwhile, a luxurious mansion with classic architecture stands out in a noble and quiet region of the big city. Sitting on the couch, the Herr Adrian holds a glass of wine, his face dominated by pure hatred when remembering his rival. The rich boy's mind is haunted by the dark image of the necromancer exuding that terrifying aura in the courtyard. The memory of his own humiliation in front of all the school's students consumes the boy in a cruel and relentless way. Dominated by uncontrolled anger, the student crushes the glass goblet with his own hand and lets the red liquid flow. A butler in a suit approaches, worried about the injury, but the boy tells him to clean everything up quickly for a visitor. Proud Adrian clenches his teeth and silently swears that he will make his greatest enemy pay a heavy price for the offense. The old white-haired employee enters the large room and formally announces that the mysterious guest has just arrived. With great aggression, the young man orders the butler to leave immediately, and the man simply agrees, taking a bow. Before the old man leaves, the boy demands he send the guest in and make sure nobody bothers the duo. A man wearing a long dark blue cape enters the luxurious room carrying an exotic bow of mystical energy on his back. In the hallway, the mansion's staff whispers indignantly about the terrible energy the dark visitor carries with him. The experienced butler, sweating cold, points out to the younger ones that the bad news about the outsider doesn't sum up all the danger. The marksman, known for being a flawless mercenary, walks up the stairs surrounded by rumors of eliminating targets from miles away. Cedric introduces himself, showing off his high rank, and warns that the price doubles if the mission involves defenseless women or children. Adrian laughs in relief and confirms that the target is just a young man, while the mercenary laments the lack of challenge in his work. The arrogant shooter sits casually on the couch and kicks the air, concluding that the target to be taken down is a great expert. Caught off guard by the comment, the boy widens his eyes and stutters as he questions how the man knows this information. With a mocking smile, the mercenary replies that the deduction is quite obvious since the client himself is also dangerous. Cedric notes that if a formidable warrior needs obscure help, then the mysterious enemy must have an exceptional level. Sweating cold and looking away, Adrian swallows his pride to reveal to the mercenary that the target is just a young necromancer. The mercenary furrows his brow, not understanding, and recalls that this class is useless and takes half an hour to summon a single skeleton. Feeling the weight of his great shame, the defeated student just agrees with a dry laugh and a forced smile on his face. The mercenary shooter breaks into a sinister and mocking laugh upon hearing the young hare's mediocre justification. Finding it all a big joke, Cedric mocks the fact that a strong warrior needs a mercenary to deal with a novice. Revolted, Adrian defends that the necromancer leveled up too fast and is also the #1 prodiga of the Dragon Guild. Upon hearing the powerful guild's name, the blonde-haired mercenary assumes a more serious posture, noting the great danger. The young student sweats cold, imagining that the experienced elite tracker will refuse the request after finding out the harsh truth. With a frightening smile, the shooter yells in his client's face, stating that the price for the job just went way up. Relieved by the confirmation, the hare swallows hard and says that money is not a problem for his wealthy family. Satisfied with the deal, the mercenary asks for just a photo and basic data, promising to find the target quickly. The hunter flashes a diabolical smile and promises to eliminate the young necromancer without leaving any kind of trace behind. Consumed by revenge, Adrian confesses that he has all the detailed information and knows exactly where his rival lives. Walking up the stairs, the mercenary warns that the job will be easy but cautions about the extreme risk of something going wrong there. Enveloped by an overwhelming aura, the dangerous shooter shoots a deadly look at the client, asking if he doubts his gift. Terrified by the crushing pressure, the boy chokes and waves his hands, denying any sort of distrust toward the man. The mysterious archer turns his back, coldly declaring that he doesn't take tips from a brat beaten by a novice. Consumed by humiliation, the proud hare clenches his fist, indignant at being treated like a useless nobody once again. Physically and mentally exhausted, the student falls back onto the red couch, trying to focus solely on his final goal. With a crazed and insane look, the boy mutters that he doesn't care about the means as long as he sees his adversary gone. The coward shouts his rival's name while in the hero's humble room. A purple rift silently tears through space. The monster's glowing prize reveals itself to be a legendary dagger that grants agility and cuts the cost of spatial magic. Holding the dagger, the necromancer concludes that the item is useless for his style but decides to keep the weapon to sell later. The boy analyzes the power in his hands and acknowledges that he owes a lot to the wise old man for giving up the key to that very rare zone. Ready to leave, Pluto walks through the magic portal, planning to rest for his big meeting the next day. Dark energy fills the young man's small apartment, forming a long vertical portal in the center of the dark room. The tournament champion steps softly onto the floor of his housing, concluding his incredible journey of that long night. Surrounded by the mystical aura, he observes the cramped place and reflects that his own room feels like a cage compared to the dungeon. The silence of the moment is brutally cut when a glowing arrow shatters the glass window into 1,000 pieces. The projectile crosses the young man's chest at high speed but ends up passing right through his body, which was in its intangible form. The lethal energy goes straight through the magical projection and hits the bedroom floor, driving into the wood destructively. On top of a distant building, the cruel mercenary lowers his bow, believing he took down the main target with extreme perfection. In the famous guild's office, the president is impressed by the 200 talent points registered by the champion. The old advisor points out that the leader became a legend with a much lower score, proving the boy's massive potential. The commander looks out over the city through the window, stating that the well-trained boy can change the military destiny of the entire nation. Curious about such a prodigy, the armored man turns his face serenely and seeks to know the powerful student's class. Keeping his hands resting on his wooden staff, the old man with the long white beard replies that the boy is a necromancer. The imposing leader of the organization falls into complete silence, trying to process that absurd and rather exotic piece of information. Frustrated, the president reminds his colleague that low-ranked classes have a very poor and shallow limit for magical evolution. With a very sharp look, the advisor retorts that the prodigy broke all the limits set for his class. The warrior's golden eyes glow intensely in the dark, showing a lot of interest in the gentleman's bold revelation. The elder puffs out his chest and announces loud and clear that the young man reached the extremely rare unrestricted summoning of undead. The president goes into a state of shock, realizing that the boy will be able to lead an immortal army all by himself if he has the energy. The leader questions about the use of magical items, while the elder confirms that the boy carried only a simple common staff. Impressed by a genius capable of breaking the class system, the commander states that he needs to meet the boy immediately. Completely focused on the subject, the golden-eyed president asks for the current exact location of the young prodigy. Maintaining his usual serene posture, the advisor reveals he gave the novice a special key to explore a rift. The president cites the isolated dangers of the place, while the wise man guarantees he advised the boy to put together a support team. Confident in Pluto's power, the white-bearded man concludes that any basic healer could keep the boy safe. Thoughtful, the armored warrior deduces that the young necromancer will be the main key to the nation's salvation in the war. Far away from there, a powerful arrow of blue energy cuts through the night city skies in a striking flight between the large buildings. The glowing projectile goes through the glass window of an apartment, breaking everything in its path with impressive force. With no time for reactions, the relentless magical attack hits the protagonist squarely in the back, wearing his usual dark suit. From the top of a distant building, Cedric Thornhill confirms the elimination of the target, regretting his delay in getting a magic key. Holding his energy bow firmly, the shooter gives a sinister smile, feeling a strong desire to enjoy the spectacle a bit. The mercenary observes the room from afar, waiting for the boy's teammates to notice the presence of his lifeless form. To the shooter's surprise, the fallen figure dissolves into a simple cluster of dark rays on the bedroom floor. Not understanding the situation, the hunter notes the closing of the portal and finds the huge lack of survivors, leaving the place strange. Sitting on the dark bedroom floor, the boy recovers from the attack while Cedric finally realizes his bold solo mission. Very worn out and panting, the young man in the suit looks up through the shadows, reporting having gone through a near-fatal situation. Recalling the impact, Pluto gives thanks for his new ethereal form that made him intangible and prevented the drastic end of his journey. Amidst the scattered shards of glass, the boy complains about suffering a near-death experience entirely for free. The boy's left eye glows in an intense red, activating his fatal gaze ability in a state of high fury. Scared by a gigantic red ocular projection in the sky, the villain steps back in disbelief, swearing he hit the boy squarely. Struck by a severe fear effect, the mercenary panics when he notices the complete muscular lockdown of his own body. Trying to stay calm, Cedric theorizes that the huge distance prevents the target from maintaining the trance and approaching simultaneously. Gritting his teeth in pure tension, the shooter decides just to resist the mind control, believing he has several ways to win. Motionless on top of the building, the man focuses his vision on the apartment's distant window, wishing only to survive the long spell. Observing the situation very coldly, Pluto comments that his initial plan was to play dead to lure the rival in. A skeleton soldier appears behind the cowardly shooter, while the protagonist highlights his great habit of having a backup plan. The mercenary widens his eyes, noticing the dangerous figure of the undead warrior and trying to figure out the origin of that creature. With an extremely fast and relentless movement, the dark warrior's silver sword strikes the cowardly marksman right in the back. The terror effect dissipates immediately after the experienced hunter blows the skeleton to pieces using magical energy. Very proud of his level 18, the shooter mocks a simple skeleton trying to break through his excellent defensive guard. Recovering his movements, the villain in the hat prepares to turn his young adversary into a painful pincushion. Suddenly and frighteningly, the mercenary is paralyzed again and begins to sweat cold without comprehending the return of the old spell. In the middle of the deserted street, Pluto invokes the fatal spell, causing the immense red projection to tear through the city's night skies. Trembling nervously, Cedric remembers that necromancers take 30 minutes per minion and plans to use this to his advantage to win. Facing the tall buildings with his weapon in hand, the boy acknowledges the immense power of the shooter, who is 5 levels higher. Holding his powerful magic scythe tightly, the young man uses his special abilities, celebrating his good stock of soldiers. A whirlwind of dark souls and purple flames rises around Pluto, summoning his gigantic army of undead. In shock, the assassin in the hat is terrified, trying to comprehend the absurd amount of skeletons newly conjured by the boy. Realizing the deceptive level given by an informant named Adrian, the shooter despairs as he loses all his advantage. Pointing to the top of the dark building, the young protagonist orders his loyal soldiers to take action immediately. The pack of conjured skeletons begins to scale the structure of the massive building as if they were spiders at high speed. Completely defying gravity, the undead warriors climb up the glass walls holding their swords and spears. The weight and fury of the dozens of creatures shatter the huge glass panel during their brutal climb up the sides of the building. In a matter of seconds, the fearsome summons reach the terrace and begin to surround the cowardly shooter on all sides. Giving no chance to react, one of the warriors leaps through the air, delivering a dark strike with its axe toward the mercenary. Watching the building from below, the necromancer deeply regrets lacking some magical ability focused on direct flight. Cornered on the terrace floor, the terrified mercenary begs for his safety and demands to negotiate directly with the group's leader. Surprising the enemy with his arrival, the young man in a suit ironically questions the supposed usefulness mentioned by the shooter. Holding his scythe on the edge of the building, the boy reveals he is very curious and asks the villain to explain his proposal better. Totally surrendered and on his knees before the boy, Cedric promises to reveal the identity of his contractor in exchange for his life. With his eyes shining brightly, the protagonist mentions Adrian's name and warns that he will handle this problem personally. In a complete state of shock and mental confusion, the mercenary screams desperately, trying to understand how the target knows that truth. Desperate, the mercenary offers free elimination services, while Pluto reminds him of the daily risks of that profession. Facing the enemy with a very cold look, the young warrior confesses that he actually has an enormous use at the moment. Sweating cold and fearing the worst, the shooter hears the frightening statement that his value will only be recognized after his final breath. Without an ounce of pity in his voice, the necromancer raises his imposing magic scythe and orders the immediate defeat of the kneeling villain. Facing the Dark Punisher, the man in the hat begs desperately for mercy while the skeleton prepares its axe. The immortal soldier swings its long weapon through the air with enormous strength and delivers the final blow against the poor target. A trail of crimson splashes on Pluto's serene face while the terrible cries of defeat echo through the big city's night. After the execution, the victorious young man calmly approaches the defeated marksman lying on the cold concrete of the terrace. Suddenly, the boy feels the weight of exhaustion and ends up falling to his knees, dropping his heavy magic weapon in the process. Breathing very heavily and dripping with sweat, the warrior looks up in relief, celebrating the end of the long hunt. Analyzing his low mana level, the boy notes the high magical cost of all his grand skills combined. Trying to recover, the protagonist recalls his tactic of conjuring a soldier in the hallway at the exact moment of the ambush. This strategically placed minion received the simple order to track the dangerous stealth shooter and prepare an attack. During all this minion's travel time, the necromancer decided to use his own body as bait to lure the mercenary in. Using the massive scythe for support, the young man tries to stand up slowly, complaining about the terrible feeling of his magic depletion. Facing the defeated shooter, the boy acknowledges the enemy's impressive talent of landing perfect shots from very far away. Preparing his next steps, the boy draws a small artifact and silently hopes not to spend the rest of his energy. Emanating a strong dark aura, the protagonist points his weapon toward his fallen adversary to begin a new ritual. The system removes an evolutionary restriction, allowing a minion to absorb the essence of defeated enemies to increase its power. A sphere of purple energy appears in the necromancer's hands, completely capturing the perverse essence of the fallen elite hunter. Positioning a simple skull soldier in front of him, the boy prepares to inject the new essence and force the evolution. A whirlwind of violent magical flames entirely covers the minion's body, marking the definitive breaking of the class limit. The torrent of pure dark power intensifies around the cadaverous figure, creating a spiral of bright rays and dust. In the center of the mystical storm, the creature assumes a new gigantic posture and begins wearing the long clothes of a mercenary. The system text confirms the fantastic Ranky evolution, revealing the final form of a high-level undead shooter. With a dark hat and piercing blue eyes, the new summon gains powerful tracking abilities and deadly arrows. Smiling proudly, the young man praises the absurd precision of his newest creature and celebrates their joint future-level progression. The system panel displays a red alert reporting that the new shooter's evolution cannot occur without a weapon in its hands. Facing his new cadaverous soldier, the protagonist wonders aloud what detail might be missing for his ritual. Bringing his hand to his chin, the boy tries to analyze the situation very calmly to find the reason for that sudden freeze. Pluto's eyes shine brightly in the dark when he finally deduces the crucial item demanded by the game's magic panel. A beautiful curved weapon forged in pure blue magic energy floats in the air, revealing the mercenary's old combat tool. Holding the item in his hands, the boy in the suit notes the great magical attributes of 50 additional points of energy. Flashing a discreet smile on his face, the young man finds the bow's spell somewhat monotonous for offering only that basic gift. Wasting no time, the warrior hands the glowing artifact to his minion in the hat, fulfilling the panel's requirement. An intense aura of blue rays outlines the undead warrior's body, finishing its grand transformation process. Observing the result closely, the young man deduces that an undead shooter could never fight without a proper bow. Holding his own scythe, the boy orders the skeleton to use that tool until he can get stronger equipment. A dark cloud covers the minion's forehead as he replies with great loyalty that he will follow his master's orders. Totally surprised by the unexpected response, the protagonist widens his eyes, noting his ally's high capacity for speech. With its empty sockets overflowing with blue magic rays, the immortal soldier verbally reinforces his bond with the boy. Kneeling on the cold terrace floor, the shooter begs for a special favor, making his master listen to the request with curiosity. The bone creature opens its jaw very respectfully, asking for the honor of being baptized with an official proper name. Somewhat surprised by that level of consciousness, the necromancer repeats his ally's request, trying to formulate a good response. Keeping a reflective expression, the boy notes that calling his companion by its simple arcane class would be clunky. Facing the servant kneeling in reverence, the boy considers that his first evolved creation deserves a well-thought-out baptism. Silence takes over the night environment as the protagonist's gaze dives deep into his ancient memories and recollections. Suddenly, Pluto's mind travels through time and accesses a vision of his past life in a building full of scattered ruins. Sitting among the rubble, a mysterious silver-haired soldier handles his sniper rifle with extreme skill. Wearing a tactical uniform, the young protagonist from the past questions if that heavy weapon could take down the enemy leader. Beside him, an armed big guy calls the boy Rookie, asking if he was unaware of the master shooter's immense fame. With a proud smile on his face, his partner praises the companion's feat of eliminating targets from 4 miles away. Holding the weapon near the window, the quiet man prepares to attack while his partner calls him the distant reaper. Through the telescopic sight, the shooter observes a group of cruel soldiers mistreating captives in a fortified courtyard. The wicked military commander orders his subordinates to eliminate the hostages without any ounce of mercy for the country. Showing no hesitation, the mysterious shooter rests his finger on the gun's trigger, preparing his precise shot. The deafening sound of the shot echoes through the ruined large city blocks as the projectile tears through the air at extremely high speed. Completely caught off guard, the cruel enemy leader can barely blink when he notices the lethal flight of the ammo heading exactly his way. The formidable impact hits the commander's head, resulting in his immediate and well-deserved downfall in front of his many henchmen. Desperate with the surprise attack, the soldiers panic in the middle of the camp, screaming wildly for cover. Fascinated with such lethal precision, the young Pluto from the past is very excited to confirm the immense distance of that shot. A spark of intense admiration lights up in the boy's eyes at the incredible display of skills on the battlefield. Highly euphoric, the young apprentice desperately asks the experienced shooter to share his great tactical secrets. Displaying a slight comforting smile, the veteran man introduces himself merely as Archer and asks the anxious rookie's name. Returning to the present time, the protagonist's gaze gains a gleam of immense gratitude for that very important memory. With respect in his voice, the necromancer declares that the hooded skeleton will carry the grand and honored proper name of Archer. The arcane minion breaks into a wide smile of satisfaction, accepting its new baptism with extreme reverence and loyalty to its master. The young protagonist reaches out his hand and calmly orders the shooter to return to his army of undead. The magic system panel shows that the boy now has only one of the 5 spots filled for evolved soldiers. Reflecting on this low limit, the boy in the suit decides to focus all his future choices on essential warriors. Sighing in relief, the young man acknowledges that wasting those rare evolutions on common monsters would have been a complete disaster. A large green magic circle appears behind the necromancer's back, making him immediately suspect a new attack. Facing the mysterious light, the warrior realizes it is the same teleportation matrix used in his novice test. Floating in the air, the advisor with the long beard reveals he was sent by the supreme leader to guarantee the boy's safety. With his eyes wide in surprise, the elderly wise man tries to process the shocking images around that building's terrace. Facing the boy's serene smile in the midst of that massive chaos, the old man tries to deduce how that battle unfolded. A tense atmosphere dominates the top of the grand building as the strong early morning breeze sweeps across the sleeping city's dark scenery. Trying to understand the whole story, the elder confirms the dangerous ambush the boy suffered right after leaving the long trial. Sweating nervously, the protagonist notes he put his shooter away at the very last second before having his secret exposed. Maintaining his austere expression, the old man asks about the condition of his teammate, making the boy stutter with no answer. A heavy silence falls over the place as the advisor casts a deep look of disappointment at the stubborn prodigy. Totally annoyed, the wise man raises his voice and condemns the young man's enormous audacity to ignore his crucial warnings. The elder emphasizes the disastrous impact of the boy's demise, but the young man assures him he can dominate dungeons of compatible levels. Facing the prodigy's great self-confidence, the man with the long beard remembers the strong juvenile arrogance of the leader himself. Completely changing the subject, the boy in the suit finds that sudden visit during the early morning very strange instead of the agreed-upon morning. The experienced mage says he has direct orders to escort the rookie to the grand headquarters of the guild immediately. Looking sideways at the body lying on the floor, the necromancer agrees with the order and gets ready to follow his master. Anticipating the boy's doubts, the advisor guarantees that the logistics team will take care of investigating and clearing the entire terrace. Walking calmly next to his supervisor, the young prodigy finds the huge absence of a portal for transportation strange. The boy remembers that the mage managed to use the portal moments before and deduces that the spell requires a long preparation rite. The wise advisor claims to use predefined spatial routes created by experienced mages in pure locomotion magic. Debunking the boy's thoughts, the gray-haired gentleman reveals he engraved a secret tracking seal directly onto the protagonist's clothes. Totally shocked by this huge privacy violation, the young warrior widens his eyes and turns his face away in alarm. Trying to calm the rookie's fears, the elderly man reports it is just a disposable magic mark that has already completely dissipated. At that exact same instant, the glowing spatial magic crest disappears from the back of the dark jacket like smoke in the wind. Right after arriving on the sidewalk, the pair observes a luxurious black limousine braking softly in front of the building's entrance. 2 staff members well dressed in the beautiful official guild clothes bow in extreme respect to the great elder. Maintaining his routine calm, the wise man orders the duo to sweep the building's roof and demands an identity report on the deceased. Watching the strong and respectful bows, the boy deduces that those workers are support agents of the organization. The experienced gentleman opens the heavy car door and orders the boy to enter immediately so as not to anger the legendary leader. After the pair gets into the large dark vehicle, the 2 staff members stay on the sidewalk, watching the quick departure. One of the sweepers sighs in envy at the immense privileged recruit being taken in such a special and intimate way by the leaders. His coworker swallows hard, his forehead dripping with sweat, after using a skill to investigate the recruit's file. The first quickly assumes it is a rare genius, while the tracker reveals the young warrior's terrible, mediocre rank. Totally shocked by this news, the agent remembers that even the logistics area of the guild requires a superior talent. With his eyes fixed on the street, the spy theorizes that the prodigy noticed the invisible probing and camouflaged his own data on the spot. Fearing for their lives, the other staff member warns that this reading usually goes unnoticed even by the greatest veterans. The guild spy sweats cold when he realizes the boy's absurd ability to detect probes and send fake data on the spot. In the back seat of the luxurious limousine, the young man swallows hard, anticipating his tense meeting with the strongest leader in the nation. Noticing the boy's slight tension, the wise advisor asks him to stay focused and calm his mind when they arrive at the location. The luxurious dark car slowly parks in front of a gigantic and imposing fortress illuminated in the city night. Amazed by the size of the grandiose Azure Dragon Guild headquarters, the boy in the suit follows his master's footsteps. The two walk side by side until they stop in front of a giant metal gate carved with the figure of a winged dragon. The huge main gate slowly opens, revealing the grandiose inner courtyard of the most powerful organization in that country. Walking down the long corridors of the building, the wise vice president is welcomed with great honor by the armored guards. Maintaining his very firm and authoritative posture, the gray-haired gentleman orders the knights to take him straight to the grand leader. Two heavily armed warriors lead the way down the long hallways while the young necromancer follows them in silence. Watching the escort very closely, the protagonist notes the rare equipment worn by level 50 paladins. Upon reaching a massive steel door, the guard advises that his level is too low to proceed and decides to fall back. The experienced white, bearded mage thanks the loyal soldiers of the organization for their important escort service. Standing before the giant armored door to the hall, the master advises that the recruit himself must open the entrance with his hands. The boy swallows hard when he realizes that high-level warriors are treated as mere pawns in that grand military headquarters. Using a lot of physical strength, the young man pushes the heavy metal door, allowing a bright light to pass through the entire room. At the back of the huge and luxurious office, the imposing guild leader watches the entire night city through a glass window. The grandiose warrior lists all the dangerous feats and the high level of the mercenary taken down by the boy on top of the building. Surprised by the great speed of the investigation, the young man acknowledges the terrifying efficiency of the guild's support members. Resting his hands on the table, the big guy explains that even prodigies struggle to take down villains 3 levels higher. With a sharp look, the experienced leader asks how a simple novice managed to obliterate a target 7 levels above his own. The command reduces brilliantly that the boy's slow summons would never stop the deadly long-distance shots. The formidable armored warrior stands up with a majestic posture and questions how many secrets the boy is hiding. Pressured by the tense interrogation, the protagonist widens his eyes as he begins to feel an immense lethal aura in the room. A crushing murderous intent emanates from the grand leader, filling the entire luxurious room with a very suffocating magical weight. Far away, the green-haired young man sits on the luxurious couch in his house, listening to the call failure message. The instigator squeezes his cell phone very hard and grits his teeth, remembering that the mercenary promised to resolve everything quickly. Totally dominated by fury, the boy smashes his own device into several pieces, trying to understand his ally's great disappearance. Throwing his tired body against the soft upholstery, the arrogant young man concludes that all mercenaries are useless garbage. With no other viable option to defeat his greatest rival, the boy looks at his second phone and decides to ask for outside help. With trembling hands, the instigator picks up the device from the small wooden table and dials the contact of his only salvation. The mysterious contact answers the call promptly while the young man in the jacket swallows his own pride and begs for help. Hearing the tearful report, the older brother becomes furious, demanding to know what brave opponent decided to insult his family. The experienced combatant raises his voice in indignation upon hearing that a mere student made his dear brother bark like a dog. Holding the phone firmly, the soldier asks his younger brother to calm down, explaining he is finishing a long guild mission. Standing before a colossal, furious level 35 polar bear, the warrior promises to return home and eliminate the enemy. Irritated by the interruption during the call, the warrior clenches his fist, concentrating a violent, flaming energy in his arm. The formidable fighter delivers a crushing fire punch to the giant beast's snout, causing a beautiful impact explosion. The colossal white-furred beast is thrown backward, skidding powerlessly across the frozen ground of that vast, hostile environment. Maintaining his highly imposing posture, Adrian's brother finishes the quick hunt, showing off a sinister dark tattoo on his chest. The grandiose military headquarters of the Azure Dragon organization stands imposingly under the darkness of the night in the immense city. Pressuring the boy, the imposing leader steps very hard on the floor, demanding to know the exact amount of his hidden secrets. Without stepping back a single centimeter, the young warrior spins his huge scythe covered in pure purple magic intimidatingly. Maintaining an extremely sharp and defiant look, Pluto replies very firmly that it is none of the leader's business. Consumed by the purest fury, the big armored man locks eyes with the boy and decrees his immediate downfall right there. A gigantic dark aura in the shape of a wild beast overflows from the commander's body, threatening to swallow the protagonist. Wasting no time, the boy in the suit immediately activates his fatal gaze, making his left eye glow red. A wave of purple flames fills the room's luxurious floor, conjuring an entire battalion of armed undead soldiers. Holding his heavy scythe, the boy concludes that he needs to find a way to break through the barriers of that isolated room. The necromancer's ocular spell reaches maximum power with the goal of slowing down the furious warrior's brutal movements. Demonstrating enormous physical strength, Victor charges like a runaway train covered in his violent and dense dark magic. The supreme leader keeps running, showing no weakness at all in the face of the dangerous illusion spells cast by the young man. The system indicates that the fear lasted almost no time at all as the warrior advances, mocking that old trick of a mere fool. Totally shocked, the protagonist realizes that his lethal technique failed to make the giant hesitate for even a single second. Cornered in the office, the young man steps back, silently asking his loyal warriors to slow down the relentless target. The commander's storm of brutal flames shatters all the fragile skeletons into hundreds of bones scattered through the air. Sweating cold and breathing heavily, Pluto watches the imposing enemy figure break through the remains of his great army. Regaining his posture, the boy quickly conjures a new creature and bravely positions it right in the path of the fierce target. The new minion has an unusual shape, carrying the unstable flame of a powerful skull made entirely of gunpowder. The volatile soldier holds a large wooden barrel while his master orders him to blow up the structure of the huge office. Indifferent to the great danger, the furious rank as hero continues his relentless destructive run with glowing eyes. A violent and deafening explosion of fire entirely consumes the warrior and lights up the whole room with the blazing impact. Watching the massive fireball, the necromancer flashes a provocative smile, noting his rival's strange habit of taking damage. Getting into the rhythm of the battle, the boy summons dozens of new volatile skeletons to satisfy all of the target's huge desire. The chain of magical explosions causes absurd tremors on the upper floors of the guild's grandiose and protected military headquarters. The guards on the sidewalk observe the structure, questioning the high noise level coming from an acoustically isolated office. One of the men deduces that the new prodigy possesses immense destructive abilities, justifying the High Command's full attention. Very exhausted by the high energy usage, the protagonist holds the scythe tightly, trying to catch a little vital breath. Staring at the heavy smoke cloud, the boy is certain that no fighter would walk away unharmed from that concentrated bombardment. The dust finally settles, revealing the gigantic and unharmed figure of the leader without a single scratch on his imposing silver armor. The young man's left eye immediately widens, noting his great rival's absurd and fearsome resistance. Sweating heavily, the prodigy in the suit is paralyzed with horror as he sees the powerful opponent withstand all of that without taking any damage. The giant wipes the dust from his face with a simple gesture and lets out a slight grunt of deep disdain for the recruit's power. Clenching his teeth with great hatred, the necromancer decides to summon hundreds of volatile minions to drown the enemy in flames. The boy spins his glowing scythe, conjuring more tormented souls while the giant's deadly shadow projects swiftly. A huge and extremely strong hand advances like lightning through the air, interrupting any attempt of reaction from that novice. Victor lifts the boy by his neck, demanding to know the rest of his great hidden mysteries while he suffocates for air. The majestic commander brings his face closer to the boy and roars a very violent order, wanting very satisfactory answers. Resting his own hands on the giant's armor, the young warrior closes his lips, showing a beautiful and sarcastic smile. Facing the most powerful leader in the nation, Pluto shows immense boldness, giving the big man the middle finger to provoke him. Looking at the boy closely, the imposing armored warrior displays an intense and sharp look through the magical smoke. The grand leader finally lets go of the boy's neck, making the young man recover his precious breath with a few coughs. Displaying a quite satisfied smile, the gray-haired big man announces that the brave student passed. Totally confused by that sudden change in posture, the protagonist tries to understand which test he has just completed. The young man sits in the chair before the intact desk of the luxurious room and asks indignantly if all that chaos was a test. The old advisor explains that he requested a mortal combat to test the young fighter's true courage and bravery. Rubbing his own sore neck, the boy mocks the experienced gentleman's false kindness, capable of setting up something dirty. The imposing leader rises from his chair and defends his colleague, stating that the investment requires withstanding immense pressure. Victor Langley praises the boy's unusual summoning technique and confesses to being impressed by his strong spirit. Presenting his credentials properly, the armor hero confirms his grandiose position as guild leader. Upon hearing the majestic man's title, the necromancer maintains his serene look and focuses completely on the commander's figure. The student stands up politely and greets the supreme leader with a handshake while stating his own name. Observing the polite gesture between the two powerful hunters, the wise elder rests in his chair very calmly. Walking calmly around the luxurious office, the gray-haired warrior concludes that the boy's actual strength needs proof. Sweating cold at the terrible idea, the young man in the suit asks if the big guy wants to have another round of physical combat. The president points out the great level difference between them and rules out a simple fight because it wouldn't generate good empirical data. Returning to his seat, the hero suggests that the boy clear a dangerous level 15 cave in the massive capital by himself. The experienced mage widens his eyes, frightened by that absurd demand, while the student maintains his posture. Staring into nothingness, the protagonist mutters the difficult conditions of beating the apocalyptic difficulty alone. Promising a place in the guild even in case of failure, the leader points out that the novice will lose all the valuable sponsorship. Without hesitating for a single second, the brave necromancer looks up with great confidence and accepts the dangerous challenge. Admiring the boy's tremendous boldness, the gray-haired warrior hopes that the novice's great power justifies that confidence. Walking through the headquarters' extensive hallways, the young man reflects on the beasts of that location's apocalyptic difficulty. Viewing the test as troublesome due to his 4-level disadvantage, the boy decides to fight for the glory. Back in the noble hall, the wise elder warns the armored leader about the cruelty imposed by those harsh conditions. The mage recalls Victor's past suffering to pass that very same challenge, needing a team of 4 souls. Observing the calm night scenery, the president reports the future global horrors, which will demand far superior talent. Turning his body back, the commander decrees that the next chosen by the powerful organization will need to be relentless. At the rocky entrance of the Wicked Goblin's cave, the young necromancer finally arrives at the location of his new challenge. The system confirms the full recovery of the protagonist's magical energy, leaving him in his best shape for the exploration. Facing the dark rocky entrance, the boy challenges the terrible cave and prepares for the system's highest level mode. An immense red aura consumes the environment while an illusory image of crimson skulls points to the deadly danger. The brave boy plunges his own body into the fearsome scarlet flames of the large dimensional portal without looking back. Near the location, dozens of experienced hunters are startled to witness a young man entering the dungeon alone. A hunter points in despair, reporting the terrible difficulty chosen, while his colleague prefers to doubt the report. Inside the dark rocky structure, the protagonist wanders through the large halls, recalling the old-school lessons. The creeping creature's macabre glowing eyes are present in the darkness, confirming their cruel brutality. A horde of green, pointy-eared goblins moves around the cave, demonstrating a great apocalyptic fury. Holding thick pieces of wood and several sharp spears, the little monsters cackle, wanting to hurt the invader. Gripping the handle of his beautiful dark scythe, the boy notes the massive presence of almost 100 hostile beasts in the long tunnel. Holding his magic scythe, the young man in the suit summons his army and claims to have the great advantage of soldier numbers. A violent horde of skeleton warriors advances through the dark cave with the simple mission of crushing all enemies. The violent clash between the two troops causes massive damage while the system warnings display the experience gain. Smiling quite excitedly, the protagonist notes that the apocalyptic difficulty boosted his overall experience gain. Checking his magical stats, the necromancer shows a proud expression upon confirming that he has already reached level 11. Walking calmly through the rocky entrance, the boy notices the several greenish bodies fallen on the ground after the brief clash. Wasting no time, the brave student decides to follow his warriors and advances deeper into the large, mysterious tunnel. Observing the creatures, the boy laments the short range of his summons, preventing a calm and completely safe sweep. Flashing a somewhat mischievous smile, the army's leader shakes his head, pushing that lazy thought from his mind. The brave young man in the suit speeds up his hurried steps so he won't separate from the large attack group during the rout. A goblin armed with a spiked club suffers a fatal sword strike, guaranteeing 1,000 points of experience for the master. Walking on the rocks with the scythe in his right hand, the boy finds the main route too empty for a high-difficulty location. The prodigy's expression quickly hardens as he concludes that the relentless president would never prepare a simple walk in the park. A huge crash echoes through the stone tunnels, making the dungeon floor shake very violently and quite suddenly. Pieces of the ceiling fall onto the rocky path while dust rises, indicating the dangerous cave's massive seismic tremor. Feeling the strong vibrations from the ground, the student and his soldiers face the darkness, awaiting the arrival of an immense beast. Wielding his weapon, the boy orders an immediate attack, forcing the bone warriors to run straight into the dark tunnel. In a matter of moments, one of the summons takes a brutal impact and shatters in the air, completely surprising its master. Startled by the crushing force, the protagonist acknowledges it is the first time witnessing his pieces breaking so fast. Maintaining a cold and highly analytical look, the experienced fighter deduces this must be the grand leader of that terrifying dungeon. The mysterious creature's extremely heavy footsteps shake the entire dirt structure, announcing the beginning of the decisive battle. Hiding behind one of the skulls, the boy smiles boldly, praising the enemy's grandiose triumphant entrance. The dust finally settles, revealing a gigantic armored monster positioning itself in the path of the brave skeleton horde. Analyzing the rival's size, the necromancer regrets the lack of time to convert his flames into deadly gunpowder barrels. Raising his magic scythe, the young man orders a group of warriors to hold the colossus while he prepares the lethal explosive minions. The green-skinned boss stares at the tiny opponents with great disdain while they advance quite bravely. In a brutal move, the powerful monster swings its giant wooden club, sweeping several undead soldiers out of the way. While the bone shields shatter to pieces, the boy takes advantage of the brief distraction to start the quick volatile conversion. The giant's terrible glowing eye focuses on the young sorcerer at the back of the room, marking the new target of its enormous mortal hatred. Letting out a long roar of pure fury, the creature raises the heavy weapon and prepares to unleash a crushing attack from afar. Sweating cold, the young prodigy widens his left eye, realizing that the beast ignored the baits and aimed at the real danger. The colossal impact of the metal, studded wood generates a violent shockwave that destroys the ground and throws a lot of dirt into the air. Showing off its long, disgusting teeth, the powerful cave leader roars terrifyingly, wanting to obliterate the whole place. With no time to run, the necromancer quickly activates his ethereal ability, transforming into a dense mist of pure magic. Returning to his normal body, the boy lowers his exhausted head, acknowledging that spell saved his life once again. Dominated by a strong dark fury, the boy displays his lethal red eye and intimidatingly decrees that the game has turned. The immense scarlet illusion tears through the tunnel's shadows, projecting the fatal gaze right onto the totally frightened huge boss's back. The dangerous paralysis magic takes over the environment, while the young man walks beside his loyal summons with the barrels. Very serene, the experienced hunter declares that the paralyzed monster is nothing more than a simple ingredient on his cutting board. Spinning the weapon elegantly, the warrior in the suit walks with the minions, calling himself the grand chef of that whole kitchen. Maintaining his extremely confident smile, the brave protagonist prepares to begin the true destructive attack. The loyal skeletons pile gunpowder barrels at the feet of the paralyzed huge giant while the necromancer announces the banquet. A sequence of deafening explosions entirely consumes the greenish creature's body, raising a dense ball of fire. The colossal cave boss roars in pain as the violent magical flames burn its armor and tear its tough skin. The immense giant falls heavily against the rocky ground, guaranteeing more than 12,000 points of pure experience for the boy. Holding his scythe, the prodigy finds the immense ease of taking down the dangerous leader without having to fight a long war strange. Looking at his system's glowing screen, the young man huffs in slight frustration upon noticing that the victory didn't even yield a full level. Walking near the charred carcass, the hunter keeps his gaze alert, feeling a terrible and dark sense of danger. The boy mentally recalls that every completed cave displays a magic screen guiding the adventurer toward the exit route. Looking carefully at the dark walls around him, the student notes the absence of the mysterious room's glowing warning. In a quick snap of pure deduction, the young man's eyes widen as he concludes that this cave has multiple cruel bosses. Recalling his theoretical classes, the boy remembers that these complex dungeons require the fall of all the monstrous beasts. Commanding his relentless bone troops, the necromancer understands the urgency to look for the other target in the darkness of the location. Entering a new dark tunnel, the army comes across a dangerous ambush formed by several well-equipped goblins. Showing no trace of fear, the young man in a suit emanates a strong purple aura and recognizes the presence of many warriors. Wielding spears and strong shields, the undead run over the greenish enemies, obeying their commander's strict order. Analyzing the massive experience gained for each defeated creature, the boy concludes he is very close to the final stage of the area. A gigantic cave filled with shadows houses countless wild monsters while a bestial roar shakes the walls. The elite hunter focuses his vision into the rocky darkness, deducing that the loud, terrifying roar certainly belongs to the new leader. The dead soldier's front line goes flying through the air, confirming that the sea of tiny goblins was just the tip of the iceberg. Strong, muscular creatures with greenish skin begin to punch and mercilessly destroy the skeleton warrior's skulls. Bearing its grotesque, sharp teeth, the gigantic beast finds the advance those persistent and fragile dark troops strange. With a terrible look of pure hatred glowing in the darkness, the huge warrior goblin spots the human responsible for the attack. The student's face reveals great frustration when he finally realizes the presence of three monstrous bosses in front of him. The three horrendous colossi rise on the battlefield escorted by a brutal horde of more than 100 small creatures. The boy looks at his own stats and doubts his energy reserve after spending so much magic taking down the previous enemy. Salivating in pure battle frenzy, one of the fearsome bosses roars very loudly, ordering its immense legion to take down the boy. Stepping brutally on the dungeon's old stones, the bestial beasts wish to tear all the flesh off the small outsider. Swallowing the great fear of magical fatigue, the young prodigy holds his dark scythe firmly and orders an advance without hesitation. Showing no ounce of mercy, the giants swing their heavy steel hammers and run over the cadaverous horde. Boasting a very thick musculature, the formidable creature uses the spiked weapon to crush the fragile bone army. The merciless impact of the monstrous hammer strike shatters a poor skull on the ground, opening a large crack in the dusty rock. Trying to defend his army's front line, a shield warrior bravely blocks the sword strike of a mere pawn. Deadly traps of huge spikes emerge from the unforgiving ground and pierce the invaders from the beyond without giving any chance of escape. Observing the immense cloud of chaos, the necromancer notices the beast's bloodlust is so absurd that it causes attacks among themselves. The abyss in strength on the battlefield is notorious, preventing the simple soldiers from getting near the brutal giants' bodies. Focusing on quick calculations, the strategist plans to use the next level's bonus to recharge his scarce magical energy. With his powerful fatal gaze glowing in pure scarlet, the boy bets his own survival on raising his rank. Accepting the high vital risks, the bold student releases a sinister fury of flames and shadows against the fearsome targets. The overwhelming energy of dread consumes the greenish beasts and completely paralyzes the dangerous dungeon's colossal leaders. Summoning his most valuable ally, the young man in the suit declares that the time has finally come for the creature to shine in combat. The skilled skeleton shooter appears on the battlefield holding its magic bow and exuding a powerful blue aura. Ordering a concentrated attack, the necromancer watches the archer fire magic beams while his energy dwindles. Focusing the tactical charge, the protagonist points at the left leader and paralyzes the target with his terrifying magic. Wasting not a single second, the warrior conjures blazing magic flames to convert the reaped souls into fire barrels. A colossal and deafening explosion fills the environment, generating a brutal thermal wave against the enemy boss's body. Totally swallowed by the immense ball of burning fire, the greenish monster suffers severe damage without being able to move. The gigantic beast falls heavily on the rocky ground, yielding more than 12,000 points of experience to the master. Smiling quite excitedly, the boy notes that he only needs to defeat one more leader to conquer his next level. Feeling his mana empty with every arrow from the minion, the strategist orders the immediate elimination of the second immobilized beast. Supporting his body weight on his heavy scythe, the student feels extreme exhaustion after zeroing on his magic quota. Staring at the chaotic scenario with great tension, the hunter widens his eyes as he realizes the harsh consequences of his act. The last warrior boss advances relentlessly and raises its thick hammer to crush the defenseless boy's head. The protagonist tries to stay on his feet using the weapon as a firm support while the gigantic lethal shadow covers his body. In a desperate cry of pure urgency, the boy calls for the loyal cadaverous shooter carrying his energy arrow. Cutting through the dungeon's dark winds, the fast and piercing arcane projectile advances toward the green-skinned beast's head. The minion's majestic shot hits the target with surgical precision and brutally stops the monstrosity's advance. Defeated by the beautiful lethal shot, the huge monster drops its weapon and yields another 12,000 experience points to the group. A strong shockwave spreads through the dark tunnel, confirming the boy's great and desired evolution to level 12. The third leader takes advantage of the moment of vulnerability and strikes the ground violently with its giant iron hammer. The brutal blow shatters the rocks, raising a dense cloud of dust while the young man manages to escape by a narrow margin. Using his new level's magic recharge, the strategist activates the ethereal form at the last second and avoids a disastrous end. The furious greenish giant grinds its pointy teeth in pure rage for missing the crushing blow against the young outsider. Regaining his firm posture on the stone rubble, the boy celebrates the fact that it is a day of extreme and pure luck. Feeling his arcane reserve fully restored, the fighter flashes a vibrant red gaze, ready for the counterattack. Commanding the rhythm of the tense battle, the hero decrees that his turn has come and releases a massive, terrifying ocular projection. The monstrous enemy trembles from head to toe, being dominated by a feeling of absolute panic induced by the spell. Walking serenely toward the paralyzed target, the commander determines that his archer should make the fatal piercing shot. The loyal cadaverous soldier promptly obeys the order and draws its arcane bowstring, emanating a strong bright light. The violent arrow hits the brute creature's face squarely, dropping the beast and yielding vast experience to the master. Analyzing the lethality of the charged shot, the young man admits that his troop's high power exceeded any expectations. The boy realizes that his wonderful evolved minions possess superior strength to ancient monsters of identical levels. Staring at the evolution panel, the strategist focuses on carefully planning his next 4 transformation slots. His practical arcane system's glowing interface attests to the limited number of 4 pending evolutions for the battalion. Even without the gigantic leaders, the remaining small and cowardly monsters tremble in dread before the warrior in the suit. Ignoring the massive commotion, the relentless fighter denies mercy, pointing out that all the beasts will serve as fuel. A new horde of brave undead fiercely advances against the desperate beasts, finishing the battle without any pity. The majestic skull archer draws its arcane weapon, preparing another long shot while its master walks by. With a very gentle gesture, the young man slowly lowers the creature's armed arm, ordering a brief pause in enemy fire. Taking the front line of combat, the boy deduces that the allies' powerful shots consume a precious level of his arcane energy. Observing his nearly depleted arcane energy, the boy realizes that his current mana level will not sustain a full legion. Watching his loyal minions decimate the remaining monsters, he decides to focus on drastically increasing his reserves. One of the strong armored skeletons pierces a green goblin with precision, guaranteeing another 1,000 points of experience for the group. The bright challenge completion notice lights up the screen, and the young man smiles, remembering all the valuable eliminations he achieved. Contemplating the spoils falling like illuminated rain near the big boss, the necromancer lord steps forward to grab the items. Far away, 2 exhausted adventurers rest on the rocky ground, complaining about the high lethality of the extreme difficulty abyss. One of the heavy armored warriors lifts his sweaty face, commenting on the crazy student who entered the dungeon alone. His teammate wipes his tired face, pointing out that the bold boy has probably already retreated. Suddenly, a gigantic golden bell fills the cave, ringing deafeningly at the top of the dimensional portal. The 2 allies are greatly startled by the noise, and the man with the buzz cut explains that a world record was broken. The bearded swordsman widens his incredulous eyes, trying to process the enormous feat reported by the dungeon bell. Driven by pure curiosity, the 2 warriors run toward the gate, hoping to find a famous guild there. The glowing sign announces that Pluto cleared the entire dark location without any help, marking an unprecedented and incredible global achievement. A euphoric crowd of adventurers forms at the entrance to the abyss, heavily debating the true class of the champion. Interrupting the immense commotion, the imposing silhouette of the powerful necromancer steps through the extermination chamber's red vortex. The protagonist steps out of the portal with a disappointed look, lamenting the huge lack of luck with the items collected from the monsters. The glowing inventory screen reveals a plentiful collection of heavy swords entirely useless to his group of shooters. Pulled from his thoughts, the young man turns his face in great confusion upon hearing a loud uproar around him. The boy in the suit faces a literal wall of humans paralyzed and completely shocked by his apparent youth. Understanding absolutely nothing, the protagonist tries to analyze the intense climate of surprise stamped on that audience's faces. In a matter of a few seconds, the cave's dead silence breaks, giving way to frantic screaming from all sides. The men point desperately at the boy, confirming that a simple teenage student broke the great world record. The girls in the crowd sigh in deep disappointment for not finding a huge muscular colossus leading the mission. Hearing the countless absurd rumors about mages and warriors, the young man furrows his brow, finding the whole situation very bizarre. Ignoring the terrible gossip, the skilled fighter decides to use his agility to try and cross that human wall. Several curious hunters shove cell phones toward the prodigy, offering great invitations to famous guilds. Quite bothered by the dangerous lack of personal space, the boy pushes the meddlers away, deciding to look for a quiet spot. Slipping through the rocky canyons, the necromancer flees from the crowd, indignant at the absurd celebrity treatment in the cave. After securing a completely safe distance from the crazed explorers, Pluto breathes a sigh of relief while holding his phone. Looking at his device's slightly cracked screen, the young man decides to report his mission's resounding success to Elder Crawley. At the Grand Azure Dragon headquarters, old Crawley tries to convince the armored president about the immense exaggeration of the novice's tests. The advisor argues fiercely that the talented warrior's premature demise would be a true national catastrophe. Tired of hearing his experienced subordinates' harsh warnings, the big man at the desk crosses his fingers, asking for a new suggestion. Leaning on his old wooden cane, the elder advocates for the inclusion of an experienced healer to ensure the boy's survival. The old advisor closes his eyes, imagining the pain of losing the most promising boy in the world to a simple training mistake. Accepting the mage's strong emotional appeal, the Grand President authorizes the participation of a healing ally in future adventures. Hearing his leader's rare concession, old Crowley accepts the terms very peacefully and promises to comply with the new rule. Picking up his slim white device, the elder realizes the urgency of warning the prodigy before he invades a new deadly portal. Before he starts the call, Pluto's name shines surprisingly on the illuminated screen of his beautiful personal phone. The wise man widens his tired blue eyes, fearing that the fearless fighter called to communicate a terrible tragedy. Answering the device, old Crowley says he spoke with the president and authorizes support members' entry into the dungeon. Holding the cell phone with a cracked screen, the young man interrupts the counselor, letting him know he called to report an achievement. Hearing the prodigy's words, the elder's eyes widen in complete shock, and he asks the boy to repeat the sentence. Seeing his old counselor's pale face, the big man of the corporation turns around with concern, wanting to understand the reason. Still paralyzed by the massive news, the mage reports that the student just cleared the dungeon and broke a record. The imposing president of the Blue Dragon quickly stands up from his desk with a wide smile at the unbelievable news. Highly excited by the rookie's immense potential, the leader reaches out, demanding the phone to talk to the boy. The experienced elder hands over the device carefully while the prodigy's voice calls for the counselor on the line. Holding the phone tightly, the excited president takes over the conversation, asking if the young man really passed the test. Hearing a very different voice on the other end of the line, Pluto recognizes the great leader and confirms his victory in the abyss. The big guy flashes a huge smile full of sharp teeth, praising the excellent performance of the fighter he chose. Taking on a much more serious posture, the guild leader announces that he has important matters to discuss in person. Walking down the long stairs outside the abyss, the prodigy asks if he should head to the central headquarters right now. Looking out the massive glass window of his office, the big guy denies the request, stating he already has a place in mind. During the night, the necromancer arrives at the prestigious restaurant chosen by the president and admires its beautiful traditional facade. The young fighter gets a little nervous upon realizing the big guy has not arrived yet, hesitating to enter the place alone. Opening his wallet, the humble student notices he only has 10 gold coins since he has not sold his loot yet. Closing his eyes with determination, the boy takes a deep breath, reminding himself that he faces monsters and should not fear a restaurant. Walking toward the illuminated door of the luxurious establishment, the suited warrior tries to act very naturally. A friendly receptionist greets the newcomer, and the young man stutters slightly when confirming the reservation for room 1. The woman is completely shocked by the room number and asks the customer to display his data panel with his name. The hunter's glowing arcane interface appears in the air, confirming his identity and his rare shadow focus class. Analyzing the important floating information, the employee verifies the reservation's validity and invites the boy inside. The woman guides the boy through the hallways, figuring that the visitor is a special guest of the Blue Dragon's president. Maintaining a very cold and calculating posture, the Shadow Lord walks through the restaurant with his hands in his pockets. An elegant waiter in a suit approaches politely and asks the protagonist to follow him to the reserved area. The fearless warrior follows the employee through the spacious dining hall, observing the other tables in the luxurious environment. Nearby, a dark-haired man in a suit eats a large plate of meat in a very solitary and focused manner. The mysterious man shows an irritated look, deducing that his ally failed the elimination mission and feels ashamed. Chewing his meal, the arrogant guy decrees Pluto's downfall as soon as his brother finishes the shady job. Walking serenely toward the restricted area, the necromancer peacefully passes right by the mysterious enemy's table. The dark-haired man gets a huge scare when he recognizes the young man walking by, shocked to see that he survived. The envious guy grips his fork with intense anger, promising to crush the prodigy using his massive financial wealth. Completely losing his cool, the villain slams his hand on the table with great force, knocking over some glass objects in the process. Taking on a mocking posture, the suited man asks if the rookie made a lot of money to eat in such an expensive place. The polite waiter asks if there is any problem, and the boy laments the misfortune of always running into annoying people. Standing up from his chair, the arrogant man insults the warrior, stating that the minimum expenses of the place are over thousands. The dedicated employee extends his hand to stop the scene, demanding total respect for the esteemed special guest. The shady guy freezes instantly and stands completely paralyzed, trying to process the rookie's high status. After a few seconds, the villain starts laughing hysterically, calling the powerful fighter a simple, miserable orphan. The dark-haired villain mocks the boy, claiming he is just a simple guild candidate with no real value. Showing no fear, the young fighter releases an intense dark aura from his body while the suited man steps back in fear. Pointing a trembling finger, the desperate man warns that fights between professionals are strictly forbidden on the premises. The manager of the luxurious floor quickly steps in, begging the special guest to calm down and not start a brawl. Surrounded by shadowy auras and mystical skulls, the necromancer refuses to back down, questioning the reasons to lower his guard. Faced with the boy's overwhelming hostile pressure, the employee panics, assuming his beloved job is gone. With a very calm look, the boy simply materializes a glowing arcane bow, stating he just wanted to show it to his colleague. Displaying the beautiful icy weapon, the suited warrior taunts the man in the suit, stating he certainly knows the item's owner. The arrogant guy's eyes widen as he sweats cold, instantly recognizing his blonde ally's signature weapon. Looking down at the coward, the necromancer reveals he defeated the bow's previous owner and challenges his rival to try new tricks. Completely terrified, the villain thinks about his friend Cedric's terrible fate, trying to process the rookie's immense strength. Showing absolutely no sign of mercy, the young man extends his right hand, gathering a massive amount of pure energy. Regaining his usual serenity, the student stops his power and politely asks the waiter to lead the way to the room. The extremely wealthy man grits his teeth, consumed by envy for never having stepped into the VIP area and over Cedric's shocking defeat. Consumed by the purest hatred, the dark-haired enemy shouts the protagonist's name in his back across the vast hall. Stopping in his tracks, the powerful Shadow Lord slightly turns his face, aiming a terribly dark look behind him. Yelling at the top of his lungs, the villain warns that the Blue Dragon is not the only famous large organization protecting the vast nation. Suddenly, a giant gloved hand grabs the insolent guy's shoulder, asking if he is insulting his guild. The arrogant man feels the strong grip and tries to recognize the large figure armed with an imposing axe right behind him. Losing all sense of reason, the guy turns around furiously, wanting to know who had the immense audacity to interrupt his scolding. The enraged villain attacks with his axe, but a huge guard in green armor blocks the strike using a combat spear. Trembling with fear, the suited man recognizes the famous bronze soldier and deduces in the same second who is leading the security. The guild's respected elder appears beside the armored warrior, citing the serious offenses of defaming and attacking the leader. The pathetic guy drops his weapon on the marble floor and begs for the mage's forgiveness, swearing he did not know who was there. Ignoring the lame excuses, the old counselor boils with anger, promising to teach the spoiled brat a painful lesson. Trying to save himself from punishment, the fearful guy points his finger, recalling that combat is strictly prohibited inside that place. The imposing presence of the formally dressed president appears next to the elder, and he questions that nonsense talk about rules. Covering the enemy's body with a crushing shadow, the big man of the corporation firmly declares that he is the law itself. The coward's face turns pale in a fraction of a second, realizing he provoked the most dangerous people in the entire nation. Clenched fists charged with immense magical energy fill his vision, announcing a devastating attack with absolutely no mercy. The powerful president delivers a brutal electric punch, launching the suited man across the vast hall with immense aggression. The devastating impact shatters the sophisticated venue's glass wall, scattering shards as the villain is thrown out of there. Stretching his arm through the dust, the big guy warns that any scum trying to harm his boy will face the same outcome. Outside, several people observe the body lying on the sidewalk, deeply shocked by the guy thrown through the thick glass pane. Completely unconscious and totally knocked out, the defeated man waits for help while pedestrians call for ambulances. Looking up at the hole on the upper floor, the onlookers finally recognize President Victor and the powerful Vice Chancellor Aaron. The customers gossip intensely, trying to guess who the noble guest is, and realize that the humble boy is the answer. The poor establishment manager sweats cold in pure terror, staring at the boy, realizing he almost offended his boss's idol. Trembling from head to toe, the employee bows deeply, revering the powerful duo of guests with great respect. Maintaining his very rigid expression, the wise elder informs the manager that they will proceed alone, demanding the mess be cleaned up. With his hand on his chest, the relieved manager Jones assures his powerful superiors that he will quickly resolve all the mess. Turning to his subordinates, the suited man demands the hall's evacuation and that the injured guy be sent to a hospital. Walking through the restaurant corridors, the imposing president confesses to being impressed by the victory in the abyss. The big guy admires the boy's flawless posture while the young prodigy politely greets the two great leaders. Returning the humble teenager's respect, the wise counselor points out that the hearty meal is already getting cold on the table. Observing the friendly old man, the necromancer admits in his thoughts that he never expected to see such a brutal side of him. The counselor highly praises the boy, revealing that the leadership duo was entirely right about the rookie's immense talent. Scratching his head awkwardly, the humble warrior confesses that he escaped defeat by pure luck and drained all his mana. The silent group finally arrives in front of the giant wooden double doors, marking the venue's luxurious room number 1. Looking at the tired boy, the old counselor assures him that his arcane energy will overflow as soon as the door opens. The vast reserved room features a colossal rotating table completely covered with the most exquisite dishes in the city. Completely surprised by the banquet, the boy deduces that all that beautiful presentation costs an absolute fortune in gold. Inviting the teenager to step into the large room, the friendly old man touches the rookie's back, asking him to take a seat. The big guy and the wise mage take their comfortable seats while Crowley encourages the hero to eat without standing on ceremony. The old man reveals that he ordered all special dishes focused on restoring the brave, exhausted hunter's magical attributes. Pointing to the glowing meals, the wise man explains that there are culinary support healers who craft stat-boosting dishes. These delicious special recipes have the incredible power to quickly restore defense and accelerate mana flow. Processing the old counselor's rich information, the suited warrior nods affirmatively, understanding the whole logic. Using delicate chopsticks, the elderly man hands over a prime piece of glowing blue arcane steak, promising to boost mana recovery. A strong blue aura immediately surrounds the hunter, and the boy thrills as he feels his magic source overflowing through his body. The friendly counselor flashes a proud smile, warning that the major enhancement has a short-based temporary duration. Without wasting a single minute, the attentive vice president hands over glowing pepper, focused on directly raising physical strength. Being pampered by the guild's two influential leaders, the hungry fighter tastes every delicacy, receiving enhancements. With his cheeks full of flavor, the young man chews the generous meal, enjoying the very first luxury of his entire life. Resting with a stuffed belly full of delights, the Shadow Lord stares at the glowing interface packed with physical buffs. Wiping his mouth with a fine napkin, the serious president shifts the pleasant mood, grabbing the satisfied rookie's full attention. The big man congratulates the candidate's top approval, officially declaring his permanent entry into the Grand Arcane clan. The cautious leader demands absolute secrecy about their alliance, warning that the young man's immense potential will attract envious enemies. Understanding the massive gravity of his own arcane class, the brave teenager perfectly agrees with the stern warnings. The respected president clasps both hands on the table and asks a stern question about who the real villains are. Relying on his vague school knowledge, the boy mentions neighboring nations famous for their deep hostility against the homeland. Confirming the tense political scenario, the leader reports that invading empires send elite operatives to target the highest ranks. Adding to the point, the elderly man reveals the fear that distant lands might attack the warrior upon discovering his feared powers. Clenching his fists in indignation, the necromancer gets frustrated, lamenting the endless cycle of tragedy and wars driven by ambition. The mage is surprised to observe the intense dark aura leaking from the rookie's shoulders, displaying a strong hostile intent. Trying to pacify the tense combat atmosphere, the gray-haired man warns that sad human wars are not the worst threat of all. Widening his perplexed eyes, the Shadow Lord doubts the terrible existence of an evil far worse than invading armies. Resting his two heavy hands on the table's thin round edge, the big guy asks a crucial question about the world's reality. Without blinking, the formidable teenager nods affirmatively, feeling a slight chill faced with the two leaders' intensity. Admiring the vast dark sky from the window, the powerful president warns that tiny humanity acts as nothing more than defenseless prey. The young man widens his purple eyes in complete shock and questions the meaning of that terrible global revelation. The president calmly explains that there are the already known blessing rifts and also the dangerous calamity abysses. Looking at the leader very attentively, the necromancer tries to understand the real difference between the two portals. The experienced big guy raises 3 fingers on his hand, indicating the 3 major differences that exist between the abysses. The leader explains that the first type of portal opens using special keys and spawns exactly in the desired location. On the other hand, calamity abysses have a completely random origin and can devastate massive cities by pure surprise. The second major difference lies in the monsters inside, as the blessing creatures always match the explorer's level. The big guy reports that calamity beasts are completely unpredictable and have a base strength far superior to normal. Analyzing the grim power hierarchy, the student concludes that the dreaded calamity monsters are literal nightmares. Resuming his explanation, the president raises his finger again and points to the portal's flow direction as the worst difference. The big leader warns that creatures from normal dungeons remain trapped in their worlds and cannot invade humanity. Illustrating a scenario of chaos, the warrior warns that calamity beasts manage to invade the earth with great ease. The suited young man is entirely horrified to realize that monsters can explore the earth as if it were just a simple abyss. Confirming the rookie's fears, the wise leader declares that the vast human world is nothing more than a giant hunting ground for them. Processing the danger of the situation, the humble teenager deduces that the unpredictable red portals are the true threats. The imposing warrior sighs deeply, stating that true despair does not come from these simple scattered portals. The president explains that every 10 years, a colossal abyss tears the skies of some nation, bringing thousands of smaller rifts. The dreaded Calamity King invades the world, forcing the chosen nation to wage a tragic, fierce battle for its survival. The Blue Dragon leader adopts a grim posture and reveals that the next tragic global war will happen in just 1 year. The necromancer turns his face, scared by the deadline, and tries to understand why the Great War isn't in schoolbooks. The old counselor explains that the devastating event is kept an absolute secret by nations to avoid global public panic. Piecing together all the valuable information received, the teenager deduces that his beloved country will be the next stage of chaos and pain. The powerful duo of guild leaders widen their eyes at the same time and are very surprised by the boy's brilliant deduction. Regaining his usual composure, the elder mage asks how the inexperienced rookie hunter figured out the nation's fate. Facing his respected leaders, the boy states that he managed to notice the deep anxiety embedded in their bones. The experienced big president reflects on the boy's words, silently confirming the immense burden he carries. The suited man praises the student's sharp perception, regretting not having hidden his terrible nervousness properly. Holding the steaming cup, the protagonist hides his painful past, warning that he knows that terrible feeling very well. The youth recalls times fighting as a soldier to keep his cool while instinctive tremors dominated his body. Hearing the murmur, the leader questions the phrase, and the teenager brushes it off, muttering at his own impulsive mouth. Shifting the focus, the student asks how the leadership managed to guess the invasion site so far in advance. The council reports the existence of an influential, neutral, and entirely mysterious international guild known as Oculus. The wise elder explains that this wealthy organization recruits professional seers worldwide, profiting highly from the predictions. The smart necromancer understands the usefulness of paid predictions but raises a new question about global relations. The boy fears that enemy nations might exploit the weakness of the dimensional war to launch their cruel and overwhelming attacks. The mage details a global rule that severely punishes any cowardly nation that tries to attack the chosen country for 5 years. Piecing together the valuable information, the student understands the sudden lack of political tension previously reported in his homeland. The big guy states that most global giants focus all their resources on their own survival, avoiding conflicts. Quite curious, the necromancer asks if humanity has ever tried to invade the dark world of the cruel calamity beasts. The experienced guild president freezes instantly at the boy's audacity and stares at him in a very unsettling silence. The old counselor warns that no one should enter the colossal portal because just repelling the abyssal king already costs practically everything. Recalling the last war, the elder laments that his guild lost 70% of its warriors and was almost destroyed. The young man lowers his face, feeling the weight of that terrible tragedy, and admits he was being naive about the Great War. The big guy stares at the boy intensely, stating that all the suffering is in the past and now everything will change with him. The president clenches his fists in excitement, arguing that the rookie's limitless summons double the chances of pure victory. Holding an illusion of the earthly globe, the powerful necromancer hears that his great strength can change a nation's destiny. The leader sits in the chair, guaranteeing that the entire guild will provide unconditional support throughout this year of preparation. Assuming an absolute leadership posture, the big president orders the old counselor to bring the stored gift. The elderly mage places a beautiful black briefcase on the large dining table, making a dull thud from the strong impact generated. The suited student questions the contents of the mysterious briefcase, and the counselor reveals they are special guild gifts. The dark luggage's metal clasp makes a sharp click while the Shadow Lord watches the opening with high expectations. The boy is completely amazed to see several luxurious magical items stored in the case and asks if everything is for him. The wise elder lifts a beautiful necklace with an eye-shaped pendant, explaining that the jewel is a legendary, grade artifact. The mystical jewel shines brightly in the air, possessing the incredible ability to teleport its wearer to an alley. The prodigy analyzes the beautiful silver jewel and is surprised to note that the rare item only requires level 1 to be equipped. The protagonist's eyes shine with enthusiasm, realizing that an instant teleportation spell has enormous practical value. The big guy displays the symbol of a golden phoenix, sharing that the item belongs to the 5 great leaders in cases of danger. Holding the valuable necklace very carefully, the young man asks how the guild president will communicate if he gives up the item. The president smiles, showing his own golden necklace, and shares that his guild owns 2 units for being the strongest. Taking on a more serious expression, the big guy informs that the rookie's jewel is linked only to the master artifact for security. The hunter wears the necklace, deducing he gained a very powerful personal bodyguard, and notes the jewel's long cooldown time. Right after, the old mage displays a beautiful silver ring, telling him that it was his very first legendary equipment. The incredible moonlight ring displays its magical attributes, providing 100 extra mana points and double the regeneration. Without a second thought, the necromancer slides the thin silver band onto his finger, feeling the metal adjust perfectly. A massive dark aura overflows from the warrior's hand as his magic base rapidly rises to 250. The elderly mage says that summoners need a lot of mana, and the boy agrees, finding the moonlight buffs absolutely perfect. Exhaling a sinister greenish smoke, the experienced counselor orders the rookie to take good care of the jewel or he will face his fury. The suited student waves his hands in a panicked way and swears he will protect the equipment as long as he is still breathing. Returning to his natural calm, the mage hands over 3 rare keys to the necromancer to celebrate the chance to explore new portals. The protagonist gets a big scare when the old counselor pulls the golden keys back before he can grab them. Holding the valuable items, the counselor warns that blessing keys are far too rare to be spent casually. The necromancer asks about the best time to use them, and the elder advises focusing on strong monsters to yield items and experience. The counselor smoothly hands the 3 keys into the boy's hands, advising him to wait for a major level cap. The warrior admits his desire to level up quickly and tries to coax an alternative suggestion from the 2 attentive leaders. The mage smirks, revealing that the 2 leaders have already set up the perfect training spot, and the boy gets curious. A massive fortress surrounded by high walls fills the horizon, serving as the guild's famous training ground. The prodigy recognizes the name of the Great Hall, remembering the huge rumors about the high difficulty and the millionaire rewards. Very excited by the grand idea of facing new monsters, the fighter flashes a wide smile, asking about the mode of travel. The elder displays a small transparent crystal, stating that the item allows direct transport to the large military area. Handing over the glowing crystal, the counselor directs the hero to seek Sector 3, focused on the safe development of rookies. Pluto stands up excitedly, letting them know he is in his best condition and ready to explore the dungeons. Roger maintains a serious expression and advises the young man to be very careful as soon as he arrives at the training site. The protagonist agrees, aware that the monsters in this great hall are much harder than the normal ones. Turning his body to the side, the leader warns that the boy must also stay alert to the other professionals present in the hall. He explains that the warriors in that place are national elite talents and tend to target rookies out of pure arrogance. Resting his hands on the table, the leader makes a personal request to avoid conflicts since the other members wouldn't stand a chance. Pluto smiles calmly, raising his hand and promising to do his best to dodge trouble without hurting anyone. The elderly man advises the boy to show the golden teleportation crystal if he needs to fight, as everyone knows that item's weight. Satisfied with the instructions, the young man decides to start his training, while the master reminds him of the Phoenix Eye's use. Rising with an intense golden aura, the prodigy focuses his power and visualizes all the new items he received. Bathed in a strong pillar of light blue energy, the hero says goodbye to the 2 veterans, promising to bring great results. A gigantic blue beam tears through the dark sky and strikes the massive classic structure of the military area, marking the start of the journey. The mystical energy dissipates quickly in the middle of the meeting hall, leaving a glowing trail on the luxurious floor. The 2 experienced leaders silently observe the empty spot, while the remnants of the teleportation spell float in the air. Roger flashes a smirk and admits to being very eager to see how much the youth will have evolved by their next meeting. Shifting to a grim expression, the dark-haired man declares that they need to clear the garbage from the protagonist's path. The counselor widens his eyes and asks if his ally is talking about the recent ambush attempt against the hero. Looking down with pure coldness, the warrior confirms the subject and reveals that intelligence has found the mastermind behind the act. He remembers the arrogant youth who was thrown out of the building minutes ago, assuming he ordered that attack. Stroking his beard, the gentleman understands his colleague's fury and notes that the strike would have been disastrous if they weren't in public. With a sharp look, the veteran demands caution to protect Pluto and asks if the investigation into the culprit is over. The leader explains that the enemy studies with the prodigy and has a rich father with no major martial skills but with a connection. The mastermind has an older brother who acts as a captain in the feared elite squad of the White Tiger Guild. The elder acknowledges that the White Tiger's master is highly overprotective and any conflict would cause a guild war. Wrapped in a dark aura, the master states that no one could stop him from eliminating that threat against the prodigy. Observing his ally's relentless fury, the counselor tries to figure out the real action plan against the enemy members. The man decrees the student's immediate capture, making it clear that very extreme measures will be taken during the arrest. Clenching his fist violently, the master orders the immediate elimination of the rich boy if he tries to resist the guards. Emanating a strong green magic, the veteran understands the situation's gravity and takes full responsibility for this mission. His partner thanks him for the support and asks that the operation be done with great pride in the name of the famous Blue Dragon Guild. Leaning on his staff, the elderly man emits powerful waves of emerald energy, preparing his own mystical travel spell. Roger notices his companion's strategy and understands that the enemy guild will direct all their hatred at the Blue Dragon team. Crossing his arms, he agrees that the hero is not mature enough yet and prefers to take on all the danger in his place. A massive building with high ceilings and luxurious decoration houses dozens of armed warriors looking for adventure groups. Pluto walks through the busy main hall, listening to recruiters searching for allies for difficult dungeon missions. The protagonist admires the huge holographic panels displaying other teams' achievements in the newly opened dungeons. Analyzing his own level, the young man reflects on his goal to level up fast to unlock his true powers restrictions. The boy tries to find out which area offers the most experience when a lively and unknown voice suddenly catches his attention. A mage in a pointy hat praises the boy's looks and notes that it is his first time in that great training hall. Pluto confirms the suspicion, and the girl introduces herself as Layla Shaw, offering her services as a local dungeon guide. Pluto doubts the kindness and asks the price of the information while Layla smiles, charging 1 gold coin for each answer. Tossing 1 coin into the air, the protagonist laments having only 10 gold pieces in his pocket while waiting for the right moment to sell items. The boy catches the golden piece in the air and decides to be direct, asking which training area offers the highest experience. The young mage clasps her hands very excitedly, praising the choice and confirming she will point out the highest reward location. Touching her lips, she explains the system restriction that only allows the boy to enter areas up to 3 levels above him. With a dark look, the guide reveals that the abyssal spider nest is the perfect spot but warns he will need to wait. Pluto tries to understand the reason for the delay, and the girl mentions the massive horde of tiny creatures that requires a very large group. The warrior states he doesn't need to wait, leaving the girl shocked, thinking he already has a highly specialized team. Pointing energetically to the other side of the hall, Layla indicates a powerful squad focused exactly on that area. The protagonist observes from afar the large armed combatants returning from their successful mission after breaking the record. The veterans collapse on the steps feeling a lot of pain and shouting for healers after taking extreme damage in the dungeon. The mage uses the sad scene to prove the place's extreme difficulty, fearing the rookie's team will meet the same fate. Walking calmly toward the dreaded glowing portal, the youth reveals he brought no battle companions. With an expression of pure confidence, the necromancer states he intends to face the huge challenge fighting entirely solo. Unable to believe the boy's audacity, the young woman widens her eyes and screams in desperation at his dangerous decision. The guide's uproar catches the attention of dozens of warriors in the area, making Pluto sigh tiredly at the stairs. He questions the reason for such unnecessary commotion while the guide covers her mouth in embarrassment and apologizes for the mistake. A brute bursts out laughing, mocking the prodigy's magical class and warning him in a joking tone about the high dangers. The girl regrets the trouble caused by her shout, but the hero keeps walking and mentions he is used to the insults. Trying to prevent a tragedy, the girl begs the boy to back down, but he simply thanks her for the good training tip. Standing before the dark portal, the warrior analyzes the floating panel showing the current record of almost 50 minutes of fighting. Reading the basic requirements closely, the protagonist is surprised to discover that the area holds over 1,000 creatures. He raises his hand with a smile on his face, imagining the absurd experience, profit, and the real chance to level up today. Wanting to act cautiously on his first visit, the boy decides to avoid the insane difficulty and selects the dangerous hero mode. The injured veterans watch the boy's entry and begin to doubt his sanity upon noticing the chosen difficulty. A green hooded man blasts the rookie's decision, guaranteeing that such a low-level warrior wouldn't handle the pressure. The dungeon's internal environment reveals a massive cave covered in thick webs and lit by a mysterious purple tone. Surrounded by dense air smelling of rot, the young man hears disgusting noises echoing from the corners and feels quite repulsed. Wasting no time, the fighter wields his large scythe and summons his feared shadow army amidst dark flames. With his eyes glowing a strong lilac, the Lord watches the rapid advance of the smaller spiders, throwing their lives away. The prodigy praises the absurd number of crawling insects, prepping his troops for a true sweep in the dark. Pointing his hand forward with great authority, the leader orders the bony guards to eliminate every nasty insect. A dark warrior propels his body through the air, preparing a relentless attack with his blade covered in dark magic. The fallen guard hits the ground with destructive force, crushing one of the enemies and generating precious points on the virtual panel. Despite the heavy damage dealt, the swift spiders soon overwhelm the minion's body, climbing up its limbs and locking down the fight. Pluto notices the strategy of the creatures, which buried the soldier in a black cloud, preventing any defensive reaction. The insect's greenish poison corrodes the soldier's bone armor, causing slow cracks in his sturdy skull. Keeping his sharp smile, the master confesses that the challenge is annoying but warns that he has more than one type of subordinate. A new magic consumes the environment, materializing an unhinged skeleton carrying a large barrel full of gunpowder in the air. An explosion of scorching flames eliminates all the pests in one single blast, generating dozens of notifications in the system. Evaluating the experience points, the protagonist notes that eliminating the rest of the creatures will yield a very high reward. Snapping his fingers, the necromancer considers the place a training paradise due to his infinite stash of explosive servants. He prefers converting his soldiers into living bombs to bypass the difficulty of hitting such small and fast enemies. Multiple explosions destroy the floor all at once, annihilating the crawling horde and generating many new points in the system. Bathed in a glowing blue aura, the boy celebrates his immediate level up after finishing the intense rain of fire. Touching the virtual panel, the master distributes all new points into magic, stating that this attribute is his priority. The panel confirms the advance and displays the hero's updated attributes, highlighting his vast reserve of mystical energy. Looking at the glowing ring, the young man recognizes the good power gain but reflects on the urgency to evolve even faster. Wielding his scythe, the prodigy imagines that the restriction break will bring vital buffs and hopes for a good mana gain. Breaking the silence, a dark green-eyed monster shoots a thick web from the top of the cave toward the boy. Quickly dodging the sticky attack, the fighter widens his eyes, impressed by the strength of the thread launched by the creature. The monster reveals its true size by descending the long silver thread, and the youth notes it is a fully grown insect. Running across the rocky area, the protagonist notes that his explosive skulls cannot reach the ceiling's massive height. Flashing a confident smile, the master summons purple flames in his free hand, remembering he doesn't need to fight alone. A dark mist fills the spot and reveals the emergence of a powerful evolved soldier specializing in precision shots. The Lord points his weapon at the enemy while the minion preps an arrow charged with strong blue lightning. The electric arrow cuts through the air at high speed, flying straight up to reach the monster stuck on the stone ceiling. A thunderous flash hits the target with pinpoint accuracy, causing the defeated creature to fall and granting 100 more points. Wrapped in blue flames, the marksman takes a defensive stance beside the young man, perfectly covering ranged combat. Observing the glowing bow, the boy recognizes the mystical soldier's immense dexterity and deduces he can do much more. Taking the battlefield's front line, the fighter orders the guard to maintain the same strength in the next shots. Dozens of new arachnid pests emerge from the shadows, preparing a massive rush toward the two warriors in the center. A series of glowing skulls hits the ground, creating intense fire barriers around the prodigy and the marksman. Relying on the self-destructing minions, Pluto delegates control of ground targets to the undead equipped with heavy barrels. Absurd heat waves engulf the closest pests and guarantee a rewarding streak of eliminations on the virtual panel. Carbonized remains of arachnid legs plummet near the boy, confirming the magic bomb's relentless lethality. Turning his attention back to the upper environment, the Lord delegates airspace protection to the specialized minions' long-range strikes. Pulling the mystical string with extreme force, the skeletal soldier focuses a blinding light at the tips of dozens of arrows. Releasing the weapon's tension, the bony guard launches a large-scale glow toward the completely dark part of the rocky ceiling. Tearing through the cave's darkness, the projectile travels fast, illuminating the predator's countless green eyes up above. The system confirms a special skill's activation, unleashing an electrical storm across the entire stone structure. Hundreds of falling arrows create a glowing curtain in the hall, sweeping all enemies present in the upper zone. The adult creatures are mercilessly pierced by the destructive energy, plummeting from the thick web threads with no resistance. The heavy insects hit the ground, kicking up dust and writhing under the intense blue fire caused by the magical projectiles. Holding his scythe, the Lord praises the marksman class's efficiency, highlighting the lightning rain's strong area damage. Analyzing the mana usage, the boy notes the technique's cost, aware that his magic pool will run out very soon. Extending his free hand forward, the hero gives thanks for the annoying horde's elimination and prepares for the next step. Huge red eyes glow threateningly in the cave's dark background, announcing the area's boss beast's imminent arrival. Outside, the two veteran warriors watch the blue portal, intrigued by the combat's 20-minute duration. The injured warrior bets on the youth's defeat, but his ally reminds him that the panel would send an immediate mission failure alert. The injured warrior dismisses the chance of escape, stating that they know every inch of the cave and there are no hiding spots. Wearing a green hood, the marksman tries to imagine a different scenario, considering that the youth might actually be fighting the enemy horde. The veteran shouts irritably, saying that a low-class fighter summoning a few skulls would never defeat the entire swarm. Resting his hand on his chin, the hooded guy reflects in silence and hates to admit that a shadow mage could clear the area. He remembers the young man's calm demeanor during entry, emitting a slight gut feeling that victory could be possible. Shaking his head, he dismisses the crazy idea, noting the hero could never defeat the cave's final challenge. Deep in the dark lair, the gigantic spider empress rests on the web-covered ceiling awaiting her next prey. The massive creature drops from the shadows and hits the rocky floor, kicking up a dense dust cloud in front of the young warrior. Holding his scythe, the protagonist notes the beast's absurd size and recognizes the strong smell of rot exuding from her body. Opening a circular maw full of sharp fangs, the colossal monster spits a thick web thread toward her target. Pluto maintains an extremely cold and relaxed posture while the fast attack cuts through the air, crossing the space toward him. A strong skeleton soldier brandishing a large halberd steps in the way and blocks the sticky strike with his weapon's handle. Leaning on his guard, the Lord mocks the insect's violent reception and deduces that this is the beast's standard way of greeting. Pointing the glowing scythe forward, the hero decides to return the strike, activating his small minion loaded with gunpowder. A curtain of scorching fire engulfs the monstrous creature while she screams in pain under the impact of the sequential explosions. Giving no chance to defend, the necromancer hurls several skulls at high speed, crossing the air like heavy deadly missiles. A second minion jumps wielding a massive strong shield and smashes the ground rocks, generating a new brutal impact wave. The fire keeps consuming the giant insect's body, causing violent booms in every corner of the tight confinement. Observing the enemy's fierce resistance, the boy praises the spider's brute strength and understands why she is the lair's boss. With his eye glowing in a deep red tone, the master radiates a dark aura and orders the beast to paralyze immediately. The fierce skill creates a massive eye in the sky, bathing the large scared monster in a dominating scarlet light. Walking around the area, the prodigy notes that the beast has finally been subdued and assumes the easiest part of the fight has begun. Displaying a merciless purple look, the lone warrior orders his troops to maintain the intense fire bombardment. Explosive soldiers run toward the paralyzed target, generating a pillar of fire and pure destruction in the middle of the large cave. The panel emits a warning confirming the Empress's elimination and rewarding the hero with exactly 35,000 extra points. Wrapped in a bright emerald energy, the mage levels up, reaching the 14th mark and increasing his mana. Looking at the virtual screens, Pluto celebrates the accelerated growth after realizing he climbed 2 levels in just one single visit. Walking among the bony soldiers, the youth analyzes the exaggerated amount of dropped items and notes his inventory is full. Outside, the marksman bites his nails, frustrated with the long half-hour wait, and questions the new student's whereabouts. A blonde mage holds her staff, claiming the rookie failed to clear the area alone, and decides to leave with her team. The hooded guy sighs tiredly, agreeing with his ally as he remembers the lone mage doesn't have a high rank. Accepting the sad assumption of defeat, the man gives up waiting and runs across the hall, asking his colleagues to wait for him. A sound alert from the massive magical portal interrupts the guy's retreat, making his entire face freeze in a sudden scare. Sweating cold, the marksman realizes the sound represents the grand renewal of that dangerous Extreme Dungeons time record. The whole crowd whispers in surprise, trying to understand how the disgusting spider cave was beaten 2 times so fast. A huge female warrior and her partner burst into laughter, rejecting the crazy theory that the lone boy beat the tough challenge. The big screen displays Pluto's name, confirming the solo victory and marking the new time of 22 minutes and 12 seconds. The hero walks slowly and quite peacefully, exiting the glowing portal with both hands hidden in his pants pockets. The marksman shouts in amazement, revealing to all the present warriors that the necromancer overcame the immense danger entirely on his own. Oblivious to such a commotion, Pluto scratches his nose in a naive and confused way, thinking he has some dirty piece of web on his face. Layla runs toward the hero, shocked by the broken record, while he explains he used his explosive skulls. A dark, long-haired marksman accuses the boy of lying in front of all the warriors gathered in the hall. The man asks irritably how the youth summons so many bombs in just 20 minutes to annihilate thousands of spiders. Pluto observes the unknown marksman with his cold eyes lit by a purple light, trying to remember if he has seen him before. A large warrior woman supports the man, deducing that the magic class's long cooldown time would limit the summons. Facing the prodigy's back, the marksman demands to know the real victory method and insists on the useless lying theory. Seeing the hero's silence, the long-haired warrior pulls his face back and feels a slight chill at the dark possibility. Leaning his body forward, the ill-intentioned man taunts the boy, trying to pull some dirty secret of his victory. The necromancer responds by summoning a dark skull covered in purple fire and asks coldly if the other wishes to know the truth. Feeling the intense pressure of the dark aura, the coward steps back quickly in a big leap away from the dangerous sorcerer. The man sweats cold, feeling an immense urge to run, and realizes through the youth's eyes that he has taken out others before. Trying to stay calm, the guy trusts he wouldn't be attacked in public and still feeds a false hope of winning the fight. Pointing his finger rudely, the warrior questions how such a low-ranked mage managed to get into that space. A blonde woman agrees with the serious accusation and raises unfounded suspicions about the youth being a spy from another nation. Layla shrinks back, scared by the rising tension, while the crowd keeps accusing the hero of wanting to destroy the hall. Satisfied with the immense chaos created, the marksman smiles maliciously upon noticing his words manipulated everyone there. The provocator whispers to his injured ally, warning that the necromancer became everyone's main target and the scene will get much better. Keeping his composure, the prodigy summons 2 skeletal soldiers, proving the authenticity of his true class to the horde. Raising his hand, the boy displays the beautiful golden crystal received from the 2 experienced guild masters moments earlier. The veterans fall into despair, recognizing that the rare teleportation item belongs only to the great guild leaders. The marksman mentally wonders about the boy's true identity while Pluto decides to abandon the useless conversation. Turning his back, the youth walks toward the mystical portal, stating he is in a hurry to level up and won't play detective. Pale with fear, the provocateur understands the huge danger and concludes he shouldn't injure the great owner of that shining crystal. The marksman admires the youth's powerful mental resilience, noting that the crowd's false accusations didn't affect him at all. The hero sighs deeply and confesses mentally that he would have crushed the fool if Master Roger hadn't asked for so much discretion. Without understanding the huge chaos, the boy ironically wonders to himself if he has some kind of magnetism to attract fools. Focused on his own growth, the prodigy decides to ignore the group and selects the dangerous doomsday difficulty on the screen. The injured man watches the boy's new entry, noticing an intense wave of mystical energy coming out of the large blue portal. He turns his face, startled, warning the marksman that the necromancer just chose the spider lair's maximum difficulty. The dungeon's internal scenery shows thousands of small greenish arachnids preparing an attack against the mystical invasion. Dozens of dark soldiers run at top speed toward the insect army, faithfully following their lord's orders. The fast spiders crawl up the armed guards' bodies, forming a major tactical nightmare for close-range combatants. Raising his hand, the hero celebrates the tense situation and points out that those creatures make a perfect target for his bombs. A heavy warrior with gunpowder dives into the black swarm, quickly swallowed by the massive wave of crawling insects. An orange explosion shatters the stone floor, annihilating dozens of enemies and granting a lot of experience to the master. The panel shines with the completion of level 15, and Pluto praises the huge amount of points generated by the extreme difficulty. A beautiful golden screen announces that a new restriction removal is available, confirming the hero's theory about evolution. The magical text releases the systemic limit, confirming a permanent mana gain with every elimination secured by the warrior. The boy smiles, understanding that even humans and monsters can serve as true, living, and valuable sources of pure magic. Hearing the bug's noise, the Lord realizes the lair's giant horde will form a valuable attribute banquet for him. Holding his scythe, Pluto breaks into a wide, dark smile and states that this place is nothing more than his own personal paradise. A gigantic monstrous spider with greenish eyes leaps aggressively across the rocks, emitting a terrifying screeching sound. The protagonist calmly ducks his head the exact moment a sharp arachnid leg slashes the air in his direction. One of his skeleton warriors blocks the strike perfectly, using a long broadsword to protect the necromancer lord. The powerful spectral blade slices the creature's leg with ease, generating an intense glow of greenish energy at the cut. The skilled skeleton advances quickly with its weapon and cuts the monster in half, securing 100 experience points. A screen floats in the air announcing that the target's elimination granted 1 precious additional max magic point to the Lord Hero. Wrapped in bluish flames, the boy observes the systemic notification and notes with satisfaction that his magic limit has increased. Glancing over his shoulder with a superior and mysterious air, Pluto calmly calls for his loyal skeletal marksman ally. The undead with a pirate hat pulls his bowstring while an arrow of pure magical energy forms rapidly. Aiming the weapon at the cave's ceiling, the marksman focuses a huge amount of shimmering magic ready for the shot. A colossal magic circle forms on the ceiling, unleashing a merciless rain of endless glowing arrows against the ground. The countless projectiles pierce the massive abyssal spider simultaneously, generating a cascade of experience points. Wrapped in blue lightning, the necromancer eliminates 104 targets, raising his magic to 470 points. Facing the pierced carcasses, Pluto calculates he would need 21 levels to get that strength and praises the new system. He notes that the limit removal only raises the maximum magic capacity and concludes that his current reserve is enough for the place. Raising his hand, the hero orders the archer to save energy for the boss fight and receives an immediate confirmation. Snapping his fingers confidently, the protagonist declares that the gunpowder skeletons can handle the rest of the monsters. A smiling cadaveric soldier carries a huge burning wooden barrel ready to initiate a true self-destructing attack. Several undead warriors run wildly into the dungeon's darkness, generating colossal explosions along the walls. Outside the portal, the adventurers wonder if the necromancer can break the record and debate the terror of extreme difficulty. The bandage-faced warrior states that extreme difficulty would need at least 1 full hour to be beaten. Ignoring others' expectations, the youth swings his dark scythe, devastating enemies with just a half hour of combat. An impressive and deafening firestorm consumes the scenery, incinerating thousands of arachnids simultaneously. After the dust settles, the boy grips his scythe firmly and declares his work finished before the enemy remains. Bathed in magical light, Pluto goes up 2 levels at once thanks to the 60,000 points provided by the Queen Spider. With a sharp smile, the boy praises the place's surge experience rate and celebrates the advantage of not splitting his points. Raising his left hand, the necromancer reveals the scary gain of 615 points in his total magical capacity. Observing his panel, the Lord notes that the inventory is totally packed with useless items and decides to empty his bag. Outside, the green-clothed guy is amazed by a loud systemic alert, announcing the breaking of a new hall record. Completely pale, the blindfolded veteran can't believe a lone wolf beat his entire squad's time. The bright digital sign confirms Pluto's phenomenal victory, marking the impressive time of 36 minutes. The prodigious warrior exits majestically from the sparkling portal, while being treated by the onlookers like a true deity. The excited youth in green clothes jumps for joy, pointing out that the hero managed to conquer 2 unprecedented milestones on the same day. Watching Pluto's serene walk, the adventurer praises his unfathomable power while the master asks about Layla's whereabouts. With a wide smile of admiration, the guy decides the mysterious necromancer is his idol and swears to fight bravely by his side. Feeling his blood boil with excitement, the adventurer turns to the blindfolded leader and suggests they explore another dungeon in the hall. Sweating nervously, the experienced warrior remembers his lost eye and feels his pride being shattered by the rookie. Walking solitarily, the man gives up the fighter's life, informing over the phone that he will take over his family's fishing shop. The traumatized ex-combatant walks away under the clear sky, tragically adding to his mother that he had lost one of his eyes. Holding 1 coin, the protagonist asks where the exchange house is while the guide refuses the payment, waving her hands. Staring at the mage with his sharp look, the youth asks to understand the reason for that sudden refusal. Blushing, the girl lowers her hat's brim and asks him to consider it a bonus for breaking the records. In her thoughts, Layla deduces the boy is no ordinary professional and decides she needs to win his favor. Excited, the mage asks the warrior to follow her through the hall's long corridors while he thanks her for her kindness. Arriving at the huge exchange area, the young woman announces the place as the two walk down the stairs toward the clerk. The suited man receives them cordially and asks if they wish to buy or sell something, being promptly answered by Pluto. The clerk underestimates the boy, believing a level 17 necromancer would have nothing good to put on the table. Noticing the counter's size, the youth fears his items won't fit while the man explains about the invisible force field. Agreeing with the explanation, the necromancer extends his hand, emanating a dark aura to pull out all his equipment. With a mocking expression, the suited man waits to see what the true amount of items the boy had would be. Suddenly, a gigantic system window glows brightly in the air, projecting several equipment silhouettes. A colossal mountain of weapons and armor drops onto the table, confirming the exchange platform's functionality. Watching the gigantic pile form, the protagonist smiles in satisfaction, seeing that the objects truly stacked up. Totally dumbfounded, the receptionist widens his eyes and loses his composure before that absurd amount of loot. The man asks where so much gear came from, trying to calculate how many runs would be needed to accumulate all that. Pluto justifies that he always hunts alone and is lucky with items, while the clerk starts considering him a young master. Changing his posture to a flattering smile, the man asks the boy to return the next day to evaluate the vast inventory. The boy agrees to return tomorrow, but Layla stops him from leaving, suggesting they visit the nearby equipment shop. Analyzing his current suit and staff stats, the warrior recognizes the pieces have become useless and seeks upgrades. Accepting the invitation, the protagonist decides to check the shop, and the mage quickly offers to lead the way there. Arriving at the Grand Market, the guide points to the hall full of weapons, and the youth thanks her for the tip. The girl points out a rare scythe specific for necromancers that grants one extra summon slot, costing 1,000 coins. Excited, she explains that one extra minion is crucial for the class, judging that the weapon would be a divine blessing for anyone. Knowing he will soon be able to summon thousands of undead, Pluto refuses the offer, leaving the young woman shocked at his decision. Keeping her optimism, Layla points to a nearby display case, guaranteeing the customer would find something useful there. The highlighted artifact is an amethyst ring that passively increases mana, costing 1,500 gold coins. The guide highlights that the ring grants magic just by being equipped, reminding him that necromancers heavily depend on this resource. Looking at his hand, the youth concludes that value is useless compared to the legendary ring he received from Counselor Crawley. Smiling awkwardly, the boy dismisses the suggestion, stating he has no problems with magic, and asks to see other options. Confused, the mage walks beside him, trying to process the fact that the customer needed neither extra troops nor magic. Leaning her body forward, the girl asks curiously what exactly that mysterious adventurer was looking for. With a fixed and dark stare, the young man remains in absolute silence while his mind seems to wander through hidden instincts. Suddenly, a terrifying aura of skulls and claws of darkness erupts down the hallway, scaring the dungeon guide. Thick shadows crawl around the protagonist's feet as he walks hypnotized toward a specific target. Stopping before the display case, the necromancer reveals he was subconsciously drawn to that spot without noticing his own steps. The displayed object is a shadow mantle that requires the sacrifice of 100 normal summons to spawn one elite soldier. Tensely, the mage asks if he was really eyeing that forbidden piece, wanting to know the reason for his choice. She argues that the garment is useless because no summoner in the world can keep 100 minions active simultaneously. Staring at the outfit with determination, Pluto thinks that this impossible sacrifice for others would be perfect for his army. Imagine the mantle's power, the protagonist concludes he could summon elite warriors hundreds of times stronger. With a confident smile on his face, the youth concludes that the mystical equipment was literally tailor-made for him. Determined, the boy states he needs to get his hands on the piece even if the sign indicates it is not for sale. Completely shocked by the customer's audacity, the dungeon guide widens her blue eyes, not knowing what to answer. Satisfying the warrior's curiosity, the mage explains that the artifact dropped from an abyssal beast in the country's last war. Touching the display glass, the necromancer laments the item's state, deducing it called him because it felt trapped there. Facing the dark mantle with an imposing posture, Pluto promises out loud that he will free it from that prison soon. The young man asks if there is any hidden way to obtain the forbidden outfit, leaving his companion completely bewildered. Thinking a bit, the girl mentions that there might be one single way to get the piece, catching the boy's attention. The guide reveals that the hall's annual tournament grants the grand champion the privilege to choose any item from the exchange house. She notes that previous winners always chose extremely expensive weapons and fears the rules might block redeeming an ornament. With a dark and confident look, the protagonist deduces that if the rule doesn't forbid it, he just needs to win the grand competition. Indignant at her customer's calmness, the young woman rants, asking if he has any idea of that epic event's magnitude. Gesturing nervously, she explains that the tournament is sponsored by the 5 biggest guilds, gathering only the country's elite. The mage covers her face in frustration, stating that standing out and winning this dispute is harder than reaching the skies. Completely ignoring the girl's warnings, the warrior touches the glass again and reinforces his promise to free the artifact. Irritated by being ignored, Layla yells a warning that the tournament is packed with professionals and geniuses of incredibly high ranks. Casting an icy glance over his shoulder, the necromancer confirms he heard everything but shows he doesn't care about the opponents. Exuding a dominating aura with his glowing eyes, the boy declares with absolute certainty that his victory is already guaranteed. Intimidated by the hunter's posture, the young woman shrinks back slightly, trying to understand where such unshakable confidence came from. Resuming his casual posture, the youth asks for the event's date, and the mage promptly replies that the dispute starts in 2 weeks. Holding a golden crystal, the warrior reflects that 2 weeks is a perfect time to maximize his own power. In a sudden movement, the boy crushes the glowing stone in his hand, releasing intense sparks of magical energy down the hallway. Absorbing the magical light, the warrior concludes that raising his maximum magic is useless if he cannot refill it quickly. Satisfied with the plan, the necromancer says he will rest and says goodbye to the guide, promising to return to the hall the next day. In a fraction of a second, the protagonist's body dissolves into a bluish light beam, leaving the market hallway empty. Alone, the mage stares at the empty spot and sighs indignantly because he'd rather sleep than train hard for the grand championship. Far from the exchange hall's hustle, the starry and peaceful night covers the modest building where the protagonist's apartment is located. Walking around the bedroom shirtless and drying his hair with a towel, the boy celebrates the moment of rest after a long day. Stopping suddenly midway, the necromancer decides he needs to check one last piece of information before going to bed. Facing the skeleton marksman he had summoned, Pluto asks about his skills and the minion confirms possessing 4 gifts. Maintaining a focused expression, the apartment owner orders the soldier to open his magic panel, being promptly obeyed. A glowing virtual screen appears in the room, detailing lethal spells ranging from extended vision to arrow barrages. The last skill listed in the system catches his attention for dealing true damage, ignoring the defense of any target in the way. Fascinated by the technical description, the youth asks why the marksman never used that devastating attack in combat. The skull minion explains that the strike requires 3 full minutes of concentration, which makes its use unfeasible during fights. The soldier adds that reducing the amount of magic used in the arrow reduces its size, greatly limiting its destructive power. Reflecting calmly, the necromancer concludes that although he has plenty of magic, the long prep time is a critical flaw in the arena. Dropping the subject, the boy sits on the edge of the bed, stating he needs to take advantage of the rare opportunity to get some sleep. Getting ready for bed, Pluto orders the marksman to stand guard for the whole night, ensuring his safety in the room. Lying down on the mattress over wooden boards, the youth relaxes his arms, commenting on the comforting softness of the place. Slowly closing his eyes, the protagonist reflects that he had never experienced anything so soft in his past military life. Amidst deep sleep, memories of a chaotic past echo in his mind, brutally ordering him to wake up immediately. In the grim memory, an armed soldier's silhouette rises in the dark, shouting and demanding the new recruit get off the floor. The experienced commander scolds the rookie for sleeping on duty, warning about the high risk of enemies approaching. Holding his rifle nervously, the young soldier gets a severe scolding about the grave consequences of a night ambush. Grabbing the recruit's weapon, the superior emphasizes that the watchman carries the weight of the entire squad's life in his own hands. Walking through the shadows, another combatant approaches the duo, asking the leader to calm down to ease the moment's intense tension. Positioned at the ruined door, the marksman argues it makes no sense to blame the exhausted rookie for the entire country's invasion. The commander talks back, reminding him they are in enemy territory being hunted like rabid dogs during that cold night. Understanding the situation's gravity, the ally decides to take over the watch because the little recruit hadn't slept for 2 days. Smiling amicably, the veteran praises the boy's endurance capacity for managing to rest on the freezing concrete. Scratching his head awkwardly, the young soldier jokes that he grew up on the floor while the superior mocks his pride. The gentle-faced warrior reveals his great desire to sleep in one extremely soft bed as soon as the whole war is over. Suddenly, the sharp sound of the wind announces a massive armored missile plummeting rapidly toward their head. The old combatant's eyes widen in pure terror upon realizing the imminent destruction coming from the absurdly dark skies. A colossal explosion swallows the whole scenery, destroying the burning building and incinerating the squad in a fraction of a second. The devastating flames violently drag the bodies of the 2 soldiers through the air, sealing an incredibly cruel fate. Back to the present, the necromancer suddenly wakes up, bathed in sweat after reliving the tragic moment of his troop's end. The loyal skeleton archer notices the tossing in the bed and calmly reports that his great dark master has finally awakened. Sitting on the edge of the bed, the boy realizes it's already morning and tries to push away the old memories, deciding to get ready to leave. Fixing his tie with extreme seriousness, the warrior resumes his relentless posture, entirely focused on his next goals. Analyzing the magical interface, Pluto confirms with great satisfaction that his entire energy limit has been fully restored. Emanating a bluish aura from his hand, the hunter declares that his body and mind are at their peak, ready to give it his all today. In the huge exchange hall, a golden light catches the attention of hunters who speculate about the arrival of elite guilds. The adventurers chat in admiration about the records of the mysterious necromancer, carrying a golden transport crystal. Walking among the gossips, the protagonist ignores the curious stares, looking to find Layla to plan his final move. Waving excitedly in the middle of the crowd, the pointy-hatted mage calls the boy's name to guide his steps through the place. Walking down the bright hallways, the girl suggests they withdraw the money from the equipment sale, being supported by her partner. With quite a perceptive look, the companion assumes the meeting was not set just to claim the fortune in coins. Straight to the point, the necromancer asks if there is any dungeon with a monster count higher than the abyssal spider nest. Scared, the guide argues that crowded places don't grant more experience, always advising to seek safer routes while hunting. Seeing his stubbornness, the girl sighs and reveals that abysses packed with beasts do exist, but are classified as large-scale. She explains that these zones house thousands of beasts on huge maps, making battles incredibly long and fierce. Raising 3 fingers, the young woman adds that the hall's rule requires a group of at least 3 people to unlock access there. Thoughtful, the guy notes he needs allies, while the mage warns that veteran teams reject sudden intruders. Smirking slyly, the mysterious necromancer looks at his partner, concluding they just need to find one third person, leaving her amazed. Desperate upon catching the hint, the guide steps back scared, yelling that she would never join the youth into such a deadly trap. The mage refuses the gold offer, claiming they would still miss one member, right when a mysterious hand waves to enter the conversation. Surprised by the sudden interruption, the 2 adventurers turn their faces in silence to discover who dared to join the topic. Raising his hand shyly, the green-armored warrior asks if he can join them in the large-scale dungeon. Staring at the volunteer with an expression of total disbelief, the mage sighs mentally as she realizes they found one fool.